Have you ever noticed how much of modern life feels like navigating through a constant storm of distractions, demands, and unexpected setbacks? We're surrounded by endless options, opinions, and obligations, yet so often we find ourselves reacting rather than responding, feeling overwhelmed rather than in control. It's as if we're playing a high-stakes game without ever pausing to learn the rules. But what if there was a way to cut through that noise, to find clarity and purpose even in the midst of chaos? That's exactly what we're exploring today, how to reverse engineer the mind of a Stoic strategist. This isn't about becoming emotionless or detached from the world. It's about learning to channel your energy with intention, focus, and resilience. The Stoics, ancient philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, understood that true power doesn't come from controlling external events, but from mastering your inner world. As he wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Throughout this video, we'll break down the essential principles that define the Stoic approach to life and strategy. We'll explore how cognitive detachment allows you to see situations with clarity rather than emotional bias. We'll discuss the role of resilience, not as something you're born with, but as a skill you cultivate through practice and perspective. And we'll dive into the art of purposeful action, making decisions that align with your values rather than your impulses. These ideas aren't just philosophical concepts, they're practical tools that can transform the way you approach challenges, whether in your career, relationships, or personal growth. The Stoic strategist doesn't avoid difficulty. They embrace it as an opportunity to practice wisdom, courage, and self-mastery. So let me ask you this: what if you could approach every challenge with the calm precision of a Stoic master? What if, instead of being derailed by setbacks, you could see them as stepping stones? What if your mind became your greatest ally, clear, focused, and unshakable, no matter what life throws your way? That's the journey we're about to embark on together. By understanding how the Stoics trained their minds to remain steady and strategic, you'll begin to see how these ancient principles are more relevant today than ever. This isn't about adding more to your plate, it's about changing how you hold the plate. So settle in, open your mind, and let's begin. So what exactly is a Stoic strategist? At its core, this is someone who uses the timeless principles of Stoic philosophy as a practical framework for decision-making and action. It's not about being cold, unfeeling, or robotic. A true Stoic strategist isn't trying to eliminate emotions, they're learning to understand them, to work with them, and to ensure that their feelings don't hijack their judgment in critical moments. This mindset is about achieving a state of emotional balance where you can experience the full range of human emotion without being controlled by it. You feel the fear, but you act with courage anyway. You sense the frustration, but you respond with patience. It's the difference between being reactive and being responsive. This approach allows for incredible clarity and purpose, because your energy is directed thoughtfully rather than scattered by every passing storm of emotion or circumstance. The foundation of this entire approach rests on a simple but profound idea from the Stoic teacher Epictetus. He made a crucial distinction between what is within our control and what is not. Our own actions, our judgments, our desires, our efforts, these are ultimately up to us. But everything else, the opinions of others, external events, past mistakes, future uncertainties, these are not within our direct control. The Stoic strategist understands this distinction intimately. They pour their energy and focus exclusively into that inner realm of choice and action, and they learn to release their attachment to the outcomes, which are never fully guaranteed. This isn't a recipe for passivity, it's a recipe for empowered and efficient action. Why waste precious mental energy agonizing over things you cannot change, when you could be directing that same energy into what you can actually influence? We can see this principle embodied brilliantly in historical figures like the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Here was a man who arguably held one of the most powerful positions in the ancient world, yet his personal writings, now known as meditations, reveal a mind constantly training itself for clarity and virtue. He faced immense external pressures, constant wars, political intrigue, personal loss, and plague. But instead of being consumed by these external events, he consistently turned his focus inward. His writings are a masterclass in a strategist reminding himself of what truly matters: his own character, his judgments, and his actions. He didn't try to control the barbarians attacking the borders or the senators scheming in Rome. He focused on controlling his responses, his strategies, and his commitment to justice. He channeled the immense pressure of his role into purposeful, virtuous action, rather than being derailed by anxiety or anger about things outside his command. This is the essence of the Stoic Strategist, a person who meets the world from a place of inner stability. They are like the deep roots of a tree that allow it to bend in a fierce wind without breaking. They don't seek to stop the wind, they focus on strengthening their own roots. So let's bring this home to your own life. Take a moment to honestly reflect. Where are you primarily focusing your energy right now? Are you spending your time and mental effort on things within your control, your preparation, your attitude, your next step? Or are you draining yourself by worrying about external outcomes, other people's opinions, or circumstances you simply cannot change? That honest assessment is the very first step in beginning to reverse engineer this powerful mindset for yourself. Every strategic decision begins with understanding what you can and cannot control. This is the fundamental principle that separates a reactive mind from a strategic one. The ancient Stoic teacher Epictetus framed this idea with elegant simplicity. He said that the chief task in life is to make this basic distinction: some things are within our power while others are not. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, whatever is our own doing, these are within our power. But our body, our property, our reputation, our public office, in short, whatever is not our own doing, these are not within our power. Why is this distinction so essential for strategic thinking? Because it immediately reduces wasted effort and anxiety. When you stop fighting against the immovable objects of life and start channeling your energy exclusively into the movable ones, you become vastly more effective and far less stressed. You stop trying to push the river and start learning how to swim with its current. Think about a modern project at work. You can control your preparation, your effort, your communication with the team, and the quality of your own contributions. These are your internal actions, but you cannot control a last-minute change in the company's budget, a key team member getting sick, or a client's unpredictable emotional reaction. These are external events. The project manager who understands the dichotomy of control doesn't fall into despair when the unexpected happens. They don't waste energy complaining about the unfairness of the budget cut. Instead, they immediately pivot their focus to what they can do, reallocating remaining resources, motivating the team, and exploring creative solutions. Their strategic clarity comes from knowing where to place their attention. Anxiety flourishes in the gap between what we desire to control and what we actually can. By closing that gap, the Stoic strategist operates from a place of calm power, not frantic worry. Epictetus put it perfectly when he wrote, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle: some things are within our control and some things are not." This isn't a call for resignation. It's a call for razor-sharp focus. It's the ultimate productivity hack because it teaches you to invest your finite time and mental energy only in the arenas where it will actually make a difference. The internal world of your choices is an infinite landscape of potential. The external world of outcomes is a sea of uncertainty. The wise strategist builds their fortress on the solid ground of their own character and effort, not on the shifting sands of external results. So let's make this personal. Where in your own life do you find yourself consistently struggling with this distinction? Is it in your relationships where you try to control another person's feelings or actions instead of focusing on your own communication and boundaries? Is it in your career where you obsess over a promotion you can't guarantee instead of excelling at the work directly in front of you? Or perhaps it's something as simple as your daily commute, where you rage against the traffic you cannot change instead of controlling your reaction by listening to an audiobook or practicing patience. Take a moment to mentally list just one situation where this struggle plays out. Identifying that pattern is the first step toward applying this profound strategic filter and reclaiming a tremendous amount of your own peace and power. How often do your emotions cloud your judgment in critical moments? That initial surge of anger during a disagreement, the paralyzing anxiety before a big presentation, or the stubborn attachment to a plan that's clearly failing. These emotional currents can pull us far off course from our strategic objectives. This is where the Stoic practice of cognitive detachment becomes an invaluable tool. It's crucial to understand that this is not about becoming cold, uncaring, or indifferent to the world around you. That's a common misunderstanding. True Stoic detachment is about creating a small space between an event and your reaction to it. It's the mental discipline of observing your own thoughts and feelings from a slight distance, allowing you to analyze a situation with far greater objectivity and far less personal bias. You acknowledge the emotion without letting it become the commander of your actions. Marcus Aurelius provided a powerful model for this in his private writings. He frequently spoke of the ability to step back and observe his own impressions. He would remind himself that he had the power to not be overwhelmed by what he felt, to examine a troubling thought and see it for what it truly was, just a thought, not an order. He cultivated the role of the inner observer, the calm strategist within who could watch the chaos of emotions without getting swept away by it. This mental space is where clarity is born. It's the difference between the soldier in the thick of the battle, who only sees confusion, and the general on the hill who sees the entire battlefield, understands the movements, and can make clear-headed decisions. The Stoic strategist aims to be that general of their own mind. Consider a common business scenario. A dedicated team has spent months developing a new product, investing immense time, creativity, and hope into its success. On launch day, a key influencer publishes a scathing and perhaps unfair review. The immediate emotional reaction from the team might be one of defensiveness, anger, and despair. A reactive leader operating from this emotional place might fire off a public rebuttal, criticize the reviewer, or make panicked, drastic changes to the product roadmap. This almost always makes the situation worse. In contrast, a leader practicing cognitive detachment would acknowledge the feelings of the team and their own disappointment, but would then create that crucial space for analysis. They would calmly assess the review. Are any of the criticisms valid and useful for improvement? Is this one opinion truly representative of the entire market? What is the most strategic and graceful response that aligns with the company's long-term values? This detached analysis leads not to inaction, but to smarter action. Seneca, who navigated the turbulent and often dangerous court of Emperor Nero, knew this better than most. He offered timeless advice for such moments, writing, "A mind that is anxious about the future is miserable." But he also wrote, We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. This gets to the heart of cognitive detachment. Our emotional turmoil is frequently caused not by the event itself, but by our dramatized interpretation of it. We imagine the worst-case scenario, the total failure, the lasting embarrassment. Cognitive detachment allows us to pull back from that frightening story our mind is writing and deal solely with the facts of the present moment. The review is just a review. It is not the final verdict on the product's worth or the team's talent. It is a single data point to be considered objectively. So I want you to take a brief moment to look inward. Can you recall a recent decision, big or small, where your emotional response overruled cooler, more logical judgment? Perhaps you sent an email in haste when you felt disrespected, or you abandoned a worthwhile project because an initial setback triggered feelings of inadequacy. Don't judge yourself for it. This is human nature. Simply identify the instance. What did that emotional reaction feel like in the moment? And with the benefit of hindsight, what might a more detached, observational perspective have allowed you to see differently? This act of reflection is itself a practice in building that critical mental muscle. This discipline of perception was absolutely central to the Stoic way of life, tracing all the way back to its founder, Zeno of Citium. He and the philosophers who followed him believed that our entire experience of reality is filtered through our judgments and interpretations. It's not the events themselves that disturb us, but the views we take of them. Therefore, the most critical work of a strategist isn't just planning actions, but first and foremost, purifying their perceptions. They trained relentlessly to see the world as it truly is, stripped of the layers of exaggeration, fear, and desire that we instinctively add. A sudden obstacle isn't inherently a catastrophe. It is, in its raw form, simply a new set of circumstances. Our judgment is what labels it a disaster, and that label is what creates the emotional turmoil. The Stoic practice involves pausing at that very moment of judgment to ask, is this initial impression true? Is it helpful? Or am I adding a story to the facts? Marcus Aurelius dedicated significant portions of his meditations to this exact mental drill. He would constantly remind himself to break things down to their essence. He famously wrote, "Take away your opinion about it, and then what is there to complain about?" This is the core of the discipline. It's about deconstructing an event to its bare, objective components. You aren't receiving a humiliating and career-ending criticism. You are hearing a series of words from another person. That's the fact. Your opinion that it is humiliating and career-ending is the optional, added layer that causes the suffering. The strategic mind learns to separate the two, to hold the opinion lightly and examine it before accepting it as truth. This creates a remarkable kind of freedom. You are no longer a slave to your first, often irrational, impressions. Let's make this incredibly practical with a scenario I'm sure many of us can relate to. Imagine you work incredibly hard on a proposal or a creative project. You pour your heart into it, you stay late, you feel proud of the result. You send it to your manager or a client, and the response you get back is a brief email filled with critical feedback and requested changes. Nothing positive, just a list of what's wrong. The raw, unfiltered perception might be, this is a rejection of me and my work. They don't value my effort. I'm not good enough at this. This interpretation feels absolutely real, and it triggers a cascade of negative emotions: defensiveness, shame, anger. Now, the Stoic strategist would intercept that initial impression. They would pause and deliberately reframe it. They might say, this is not a personal attack, it is data. This person has given me a detailed map of their expectations and how I can better meet them. This critical feedback is not an obstacle to my success, it is an essential tool for it. This is an opportunity to improve, to demonstrate resilience, and to ultimately deliver a better result. This act of reframing is a conscious choice to see the challenge as an opportunity, a chance to practice virtue. It transforms the entire emotional landscape of the situation. Instead of feeling defeated, you feel equipped. Instead of feeling attacked, you feel guided. This is how perception becomes a discipline. It's a muscle you exercise every time you choose to question your gut reaction and select a more empowering and accurate interpretation. It's the difference between seeing a wall and seeing a hurdle. One stops you dead in your tracks, the other is something you are meant to get over. So I want you to bring this home right now. Think about your own life. What is one common situation where your initial perception almost always leans toward the negative? Maybe it's getting stuck in traffic, where you immediately interpret it as the universe conspiring to ruin your day. Perhaps it's a family member making a certain comment that you always take as a personal jab, even if it wasn't intended that way. Or maybe it's a minor mistake at work that you instantly blow up into a sign of your overall incompetence. Identify that one recurring trigger. Just becoming aware of your automatic negative interpretation is the first and most powerful step in applying this ancient Stoic discipline and reclaiming your power to see things clearly. Resilience isn't something you're simply born with, it's a quality forged deliberately through consistent practice and a specific way of perceiving the world. The Stoic strategist doesn't see themselves as a fragile vessel trying to avoid the storms of life, but as a blacksmith who uses the heat and hammer of adversity to temper their own strength. They actively reframe difficulty not as a pointless burden to be endured, but as the essential training ground where their strategic mind and inner fortitude are developed. This mindset shift is the absolute core of building unshakable resilience. It transforms you from a passive victim of circumstance into an active participant in your own growth, recognizing that every challenge carries within it the seed of an equivalent benefit, if only you have the perspective to see it. This powerful reframing is perfectly captured in the profound Stoic principle of amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is far more than mere acceptance or Stoic endurance. It is an active, embracing attitude toward everything that happens, including the losses, the setbacks, and the pain. The idea is to not just tolerate what occurs in your life, but to welcome it, to love it, because it is all part of the raw material that shapes who you are. The Stoic strategist looks at an obstacle and says, "This too is for my benefit. This is what life has given me to work with. How can I use this specific situation to practice courage, to cultivate patience, or to develop creativity?" This philosophy turns every apparent disadvantage into a potential advantage. A closed door is no longer a failure, it's a redirection. A criticism is no longer an attack, it's free consulting. A personal loss is no longer just a wound, it's a depth of understanding you can offer to others. We can find stunning historical examples of this principle in action. Consider the Roman senator Cato the Younger, a man who rigorously lived his Stoic principles. When he found himself on the losing side of a civil war and faced certain death at the hands of Julius Caesar's regime, he did not flee in terror or beg for mercy. He met his fate with such deliberate calm and principle that his death became a legendary symbol of republican virtue and personal resilience. Even his political enemies were forced to acknowledge his unwavering strength. Then there's Seneca, the philosopher and statesman, who was abruptly exiled to the barren island of Corsica by the Emperor Claudius. Instead of crumbling into self-pity and despair, Seneca used his 8 years in exile productively. He wrote some of his most insightful letters and essays from that isolated place. turning a period of immense professional and personal setback into a time of profound intellectual and philosophical productivity. He didn't just survive his exile, he used it as fuel for his work. This approach is just as applicable in our modern world. Look at the journey of any successful entrepreneur. You will rarely find a story of uninterrupted, easy success. What you will find is a narrative punctuated by failed ventures, rejected ideas, and near bankruptcies. The ones who ultimately succeed are those who practice a form of amor fati. They don't love the failure itself, but they love the learning and the toughening that comes from it. They see a failed startup not as a mark of shame, but as a paid education in what doesn't work, bringing them one step closer to what does. They embrace the struggle because they understand that the resilience built in the troughs of disappointment is what will allow them to handle the peaks of success without becoming arrogant or complacent. This Stoic mindset is their greatest strategic asset. Seneca, who understood hardship intimately, offered us timeless words on this very subject. He wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." This simple analogy is incredibly powerful. You wouldn't expect to develop physical strength without lifting weights and straining your muscles. The burn and fatigue are not signs that you are failing, they are signs that you are growing. Seneca is telling us to view mental and emotional challenges in the exact same way. Anxiety, disappointment, and fear are the weights for your mind. The feeling of strain is not proof that you are breaking, it is proof that you are building resilience. Each time you face a difficulty with courage and clarity, you are adding another plate to the barbell, making yourself stronger for the next challenge that life will inevitably bring. So I encourage you to take a moment for a brief but powerful reflection. Cast your mind back over your own life and identify one significant past challenge that, at the time, felt overwhelming or even devastating. It could be a professional failure, a personal heartbreak, a period of ill health, or a financial struggle. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, ask yourself, how did that experience ultimately strengthen you? What skill did it force you to develop that you now rely on? What depth of character did it forge? What mistaken assumption did it correct? By consciously recognizing how a past adversity became a source of your present strength, you actively practice amor fati and reinforce the powerful belief that you are not diminished by your struggles, but are continually being built by them. Now let's turn our attention to one of the most practical applications of this mindset, the crucial difference between reactive behavior and purposeful action. Most people operate on a kind of autopilot where external events trigger immediate, often unthinking, emotional responses. Something goes wrong and frustration erupts. Someone says something critical and defensiveness fires back. A tempting shortcut appears and impulse takes over. This reactive loop is like being a pinball, constantly bounced around by the bumpers and flippers of circumstance, never truly choosing your direction. The Stoic strategist, in stark contrast, aims to be the player, not the ball. They understand that between any stimulus and their response, there exists a critical space, a pause, and within that space lies their freedom and power to choose. This isn't about suppressing natural feelings. It's about inserting a moment of conscious choice before those feelings translate into action. Epictetus gave us the essential instruction for mastering this pause. He advised his students to regularly examine their impressions and impulses. He said, "Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, 'Hold on a moment. Let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test.' This is the mental equivalent of taking a deep breath before you speak or counting to 10 when you're angry. It's a deliberate interruption of the automatic cycle. That moment of examination allows you to ask a simple but profound question. Does this potential action align with my core principles and my long-term goals? Is this response wise? Is it just? Is it courageous? Is it temperate? By running your initial impulse through this filter of virtue, you move from being a reactor to being a responder. Your actions cease to be about the immediate gratification of an emotion and start being about the deliberate expression of your character. Consider a high-pressure ethical dilemma in a modern workplace. Imagine you discover that a colleague, perhaps even a friend, has been cutting corners on safety protocols to make a project deadline, potentially putting others at risk. The reactive, impulsive response might be driven by loyalty or fear. You might immediately confront them in anger, creating a hostile situation, or you might choose to look the other way to avoid conflict, rationalizing that no harm has happened yet. Both are reactions, not responses. The Stoic strategist would feel the initial surge of concern, perhaps even anger at the breach of trust, but they would then invoke that crucial pause. They would examine the impulse. Their core principles might include justice, honesty, and the well-being of the team. Aligning with those values, a purposeful action would look different. It might involve a private, calm conversation with the colleague to understand the situation fully, clearly stating the ethical breach, and then, if necessary, escalating the matter through proper channels to ensure safety, even if it's an uncomfortable or difficult path. The action is the same in outcome, the issue is addressed, but the quality and intention behind it are worlds apart. One is a knee-jerk emotion, the other is a value-driven decision. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this need for intentionality in his private writings. He sought to ensure that every one of his actions, from the monumental to the mundane, had a clear and virtuous purpose. He wrote, "You always have the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone." This advice is about freeing up your mental energy to focus on what truly requires your purposeful action, your own choices. He's telling us not to waste our intention on forming needless judgments about external events, but to conserve it and direct it fully toward ensuring our next move is considered and right. When you act with your whole mind and heart, fully behind the principle you are choosing to express in that moment. This practice of moving from reaction to response transforms every interaction into an opportunity for strategic alignment. It turns daily life into a continuous training ground. The goal isn't to achieve perfection, to never feel that initial surge of irritation or desire, but to get better and better at recognizing it and choosing what to do with it. Each time you successfully pause and align an action with a principle, you strengthen that neural pathway. You are quite literally rewiring your brain for greater agency and less anxiety. Your sense of self shifts from being defined by what happens to you to being defined by how you choose to meet what happens. So I want to bring this directly into your own experience. Take a moment to look at the landscape of your life. Where is one area where you most frequently notice yourself acting on autopilot, reacting impulsively rather than responding purposefully? Is it during your morning commute when another driver cuts you off? Is it in the heat of a disagreement with a partner where old patterns take over and you say things you later regret? Is it at work when you receive an email that feels demanding or critical, and your fingers fly across the keyboard with a defensive reply before you've even fully processed the message? Or perhaps it's in your spending habits where a flash of desire for something new overrides your broader financial goals. Identify that one arena. Simply acknowledging it is the first step toward building that vital pause, that space where your strategic, principled self can step in and choose a different, more purposeful way forward. What if your biggest decisions were led by logic rather than fear or desire? This is the central question at the heart of the Stoic approach to strategy. For the Stoic thinker, reason isn't just a helpful tool, it's the very command center from which all effective action is launched. They saw the rational mind as our highest faculty, the defining characteristic that separates human beings from other animals, and the one thing that, when properly cultivated, allows us to navigate a complex and often chaotic world with clarity and purpose. This isn't about becoming a cold, unfeeling calculator. It's about ensuring that your deepest values and long-term objectives are the compass that guides your choices, rather than the temporary winds of emotion, social pressure, or short-sighted craving. The rational mind, to a Stoic, is what allows you to see the entire chessboard, not just the immediate move. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, understood better than most that our circumstances do not have to dictate our responses if we have mastery over our reasoning. He placed the use of reason at the absolute core of a good life. He taught that our ability to examine our impressions, to question our initial reactions, and to choose a path based on what is truly good and virtuous is our greatest power. He famously said, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments concerning them." This single idea is a master key to strategic rationality. The event itself is neutral until our mind interprets it. Rationality is the process of stripping away the emotional, fearful, or desire-laden judgment to see the event for what it objectively is, allowing you to craft a response that serves your goals rather than your impulses. Your boss's critical feedback is not an attack, it is information. A financial setback is not a catastrophe, it is a new set of numbers to work with. A competitor's success is not a personal affront, it is a data point about the market. Reason allows you to make these crucial distinctions. Consider the process of long-term planning, whether for a multi-year business project or a personal goal like saving for retirement or achieving a high level of physical fitness. The emotional mind is terrible at this. It gets bored, it seeks instant gratification, it gets discouraged by temporary setbacks, and it is easily swayed by the opinions of others. It might see a 2-year timeline and feel only overwhelm, causing you to abandon the plan before you even start. The rational mind, trained in Stoic practice, approaches it differently. It breaks the monumental goal down into a series of small, manageable, rational steps. It anticipates obstacles not as reasons to quit, but as predictable challenges to be solved. It understands that the feeling of discouragement 3 months in is just a feeling, a piece of data about your current state of mind, not a verdict on the entire endeavor. It can separate the difficult emotion from the logical next action, allowing you to feel discouraged but still go to the gym, or feel intimidated but still make the sales call. This is rationality in service of strategy. This practice creates a profound sense of inner stability. When your actions are dictated by the ever-changing weather of your emotions, you feel chaotic and out of control. But when your actions are dictated by a rational commitment to your principles and plans, you gain a deep sense of agency. You are no longer at the mercy of how you feel in any given moment. You can feel afraid and still act courageously. You can feel lazy and still choose discipline. You can feel angry and still respond with patience. This is the superpower that the Stoic strategist cultivates. It's the reason a leader can make a tough but necessary decision to restructure a team despite feeling sympathy for those affected. It's the reason an investor can stick to a well-reasoned strategy during a market panic instead of selling everything in a fear-driven reaction. The rational mind provides the ballast that keeps the ship upright in the storm. So I invite you to turn this lens inward for a moment. Bring to mind a recent decision you faced, whether significant or seemingly small. It could have been a financial choice, a career move, a conversation you needed to have, or even how you reacted to a piece of news. As you reflect on that moment, can you identify the dominant influence behind your final choice? Was it primarily a logical assessment of the facts and your long-term best interests, or was it swayed more by a swirling cloud of emotion, perhaps anxiety about the unknown, a burning desire for a particular outcome, or the fear of what others might think? There's no judgment here. This is simply an exercise in awareness. Recognizing the moments where emotion holds the steering wheel is the essential first step in gently inviting your rational mind to take a turn driving. It's a natural human instinct to seek stability and cling to the things we know, our routines, our possessions, our plans for the future. We build our lives on the assumption that certain things will remain constant, and this desire for permanence can feel like a source of security. But the Stoic strategist understands that this very clinging is often the source of our greatest fragility. When we anchor our sense of safety and identity to things that are inherently transient, a job, a relationship, a particular state of the market, or even our own health, we set ourselves up for a devastating shock when the inevitable winds of change begin to blow. Rigidity, not change itself, is the real enemy of effective strategy. A rigid tree branch snaps in a storm. A flexible willow branch bends and sways, surviving intact. The Stoic mind strives to be that willow branch, finding its strength not in resisting change, but in its capacity to adapt with grace and intelligence. This profound agility is cultivated through a deliberate practice of reflecting on impermanence. The Stoics weren't morbid pessimists, they were radical realists. They regularly meditated on the fleeting nature of all things to inoculate themselves against the shock of loss and to maintain a light, adaptable grip on their plans. Marcus Aurelius dedicated countless passages in his meditations to this theme, reminding himself that everything is in a state of constant flux. He wrote, "Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come. Existence flows past us like a river." He wasn't saying this to induce despair, but to create a profound sense of presence and strategic readiness. When you deeply internalize that nothing lasts forever, you stop taking the current moment for granted. You appreciate what you have while you have it, and you are psychologically prepared to let it go when it's time, pivoting quickly to the new reality without being paralyzed by grief or resistance. We can see this principle play out dramatically in the modern business world. Consider the fate of companies that became iconic giants by mastering a specific technology or business model, only to collapse because they could not adapt to a changing landscape. They clung to their stable, profitable past while the world moved on. In contrast, the companies that thrive are those led by strategists with a stoic sense of impermanence. They don't assume today's successful product will be relevant in 5 years. They are constantly scanning the horizon, experimenting with new ideas, and are willing to cannibalize their own successes before a competitor does it for them. They see disruption not as a threat to be feared, but as the fundamental nature of the game. This mindset is just as powerful in our personal lives. The person who defines themselves solely by their career title will be shattered by a layoff. The person who understands that roles and industries change can see that same layoff as a difficult but necessary redirection, an opportunity to learn new skills and explore a path they might never have considered otherwise. Seneca, who experienced immense wealth, power, exile, and ultimately a forced suicide, spoke directly to the necessity of this flexible attitude. He advised, "You must adapt yourself to the things you are fated to bear, and you must get used to them. Whatever happens, assume it was going to happen and do not rail against what cannot be changed. This is the ultimate strategic advice. It's not passive resignation, it's an active mental preparation. By accepting in advance that change is not only possible but guaranteed, you remove its emotional sting. You stop wasting energy fighting against the current of reality and start using all your energy to navigate it skillfully. You begin to plan for multiple contingencies, to build flexible systems instead of rigid plans, and to develop a personal identity that is rooted in your character and virtues, things you can control, rather than in your external circumstances, which are always subject to change. This practice of embracing impermanence ultimately grants you a tremendous kind of freedom. When you stop trying to freeze the world in place, you can flow with it. You become a master of the pivot, able to reassess a situation, let go of what's no longer working, and chart a new course with clarity and calmness. Your strategy becomes a living, breathing thing that evolves with the circumstances, rather than a brittle set of instructions that shatters under pressure. So take this idea and make it personal. Look at your own life right now, your habits, your career path, your relationships, your daily routines. Is there one thing you are holding onto too tightly, resisting unnecessary change because it feels uncomfortable or frightening? Perhaps it's an outdated skill you know you need to update, a relationship dynamic that has run its course, or even a personal belief about yourself that is limiting your growth. Identify that one point of rigidity. Simply acknowledging it is the first step toward loosening your grip, practicing the Stoic art of flexibility, and discovering the incredible strategic power that comes from learning to flow with the river of change, rather than trying to build a dam against it. Now let's explore one of the most powerful and practical techniques in the Stoic toolkit, negative visualization. This is the deliberate practice of mentally rehearsing potential setbacks, losses, or difficulties not as an exercise in pessimism, but as a strategic method to build emotional resilience, reduce anxiety, and dramatically increase your appreciation for the good things you already have. The Stoic strategist doesn't wait for disaster to strike to figure out how they'll respond. They've already walked through that scenario in their mind countless times, which allows them to meet real adversity with a sense of preparation and calm rather than panic and surprise. It's like a fire drill for the mind. You don't conduct a fire drill because you expect the building to burn down. You do it so that if the alarm ever sounds, your response is measured, effective, and automatic, not ruled by blind fear. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a master of this technique. Despite being one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in Rome, he regularly set aside time to contemplate the loss of his status, his possessions, and even his life. He would actually imagine himself being sent into exile, losing his fortune, or falling gravely ill. In one of his letters, he advises his friend Lucilius to do the same, writing, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." This is the brilliant psychology behind the practice. Fear and anxiety are often rooted in the unknown, in the shocking surprise of a negative event. By mentally visiting that place beforehand, you strip away its element of surprise. The event, if it happens, becomes something you have already faced and processed in your mind. It feels familiar, manageable. You've already identified the parts of the situation you can control, your attitude, your efforts, your values, and this makes you feel empowered even in the midst of external chaos. We can easily translate this ancient practice into a modern context. Imagine you have a crucial and potentially difficult conversation coming up, perhaps asking for a raise, ending a relationship, or confronting a friend about a hurtful behavior. The natural, anxious mind might spend days dreading this conversation, imagining everything that could go wrong and building up a mountain of fear. This type of worrying is passive and destructive. Negative visualization, in contrast, is active and constructive. you would set aside 5 minutes of quiet time to consciously and calmly walk through the absolute worst-case scenario. What if the conversation goes terribly? What if your boss says no and seems disappointed in you? What if your friend reacts with anger and ends the relationship? You sit with that outcome, you accept it, and then, most importantly, you ask yourself, okay, if that happens, what then? What is within my control? You might realize that you can control staying professional and graceful in the moment. You can control preparing a stronger case for next time. You can control your own emotional response and not retaliate. You realize that even the worst outcome is not a full-stop ending. It's simply a new set of circumstances to navigate. This process doesn't make the conversation easier, but it makes you stronger for it. Beyond building resilience, this practice is also a profound engine for gratitude. It's incredibly difficult to take the people and things we love for granted when we regularly remind ourselves of their temporary nature. The Stoic strategist might pause while enjoying a meal with their family to briefly reflect on the fact that this gathering is not a permanent guarantee. This isn't meant to induce sadness, it's meant to heighten the appreciation and presence experienced in that very moment. It makes the food taste richer, the laughter sound sweeter, and the conversation feel more meaningful. By mentally rehearsing the loss of what we have, we paradoxically learn to hold it more dearly while we have it. We stop seeing our health, our relationships, and our comforts as entitlements and start seeing them as gifts, which fundamentally shifts our entire experience of daily life from one of lack to one of abundance. So I encourage you to try this for yourself. Think of one outcome you currently fear. It could be related to your work, your health, or a personal relationship. Close your eyes for just a moment and give yourself permission to imagine that fear actually coming true. Don't just glance at it, really step into the scenario. Feel the initial sting and then move past it. Now, from that place, ask the most important Stoic question. Within this worst-case scenario, what aspects remain within my control? What would my next rational, virtuous step be? You will almost always find that your sphere of control, while maybe smaller, never completely disappears. Identifying that core of agency is how you transform a terrifying phantom into a manageable situation, and in doing so, you reclaim a tremendous amount of power from your fears. Every decision is a chance to practice presence and purpose. This is where the Stoic art of mindful decision-making elevates strategic thinking from a mere planning exercise to a profound way of engaging with life itself. It's the practice of bringing your full, undivided attention to the choice directly in front of you, freeing it from the clutter of past regrets and future anxieties. For the Stoic strategist, mindfulness isn't about achieving a blissful state of relaxation. It's a practical tool for cutting through mental noise to access a clearer, more rational, and value-driven response. It allows you to see the decision for what it truly is, separate from the emotional static that so often clouds our judgment, ensuring that your final action is a deliberate expression of your principles rather than a reflexive twitch conditioned by habit or fear. This profound focus on the absolute present moment was a cornerstone of Epictetus's teachings. He constantly directed his students away from unhelpful speculation about the future or painful ruminations on the past, and toward the power they could wield right now in their immediate judgment and action. He taught that our chief task is to manage the impression of the present moment correctly. He said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." This isn't a call for passivity. It's an instruction to fully accept the reality of the current situation as your starting point, so that your decision is grounded in what is, rather than in your wishful thinking about what should be. A mindful decision begins with this clear-eyed acceptance of the present facts. From that solid foundation, you can then choose how to move forward with intention. Consider the modern challenge of prioritizing your daily tasks. The unmindful approach is to operate from a place of reactive urgency. Your inbox pings with a new message labeled ASAP, and you immediately abandon the important strategic report you were working on to answer it. A colleague stops by your desk with a quick question, and 30 minutes vanish. By the end of the day, you've been constantly busy, responding to every stimulus, yet you feel you've accomplished nothing of real substance. The Stoic strategist practicing mindfulness would handle this differently. They would pause before shifting gears. They would briefly examine the new email. Does this align with my most important goals for today? Is it truly more urgent than my current deep work? By inserting that moment of mindful presence, they reclaim the power to choose their focus. They might decide to batch process emails later or delegate the query. This mindful prioritization ensures that their actions are driven by their values and long-term objectives, not by the loudest or most recent demand for their attention. Marcus Aurelius provided himself with a constant reminder of this need for singular focus. In his meditations, he wrote, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a man, on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice." The phrase, "like a Roman," evokes a sense of disciplined, purposeful action. He's urging himself to pour his entire being into the task immediately before him, to do it with care and integrity, and to do it willingly, not with resentment or distraction. This is the essence of mindful execution. It's the difference between attending a meeting while mentally composing your grocery list and truly listening, contributing, and being fully present with the people in the room. That quality of attention transforms the nature of your work and the quality of your decisions within it. You catch nuances you would otherwise miss, you respond with greater wisdom, and you build deeper trust. This practice turns every mundane choice into a micro-training session for your strategic mind. From the moment you choose to get out of bed instead of hitting snooze, to deciding what to have for lunch, to selecting your words in a difficult conversation, each instance is an opportunity to either act on autopilot or to act with mindful purpose. The cumulative effect of these small, conscious decisions is enormous. They strengthen your ability to maintain that crucial pause when the big, high-pressure decisions arrive. They build the mental muscle that allows you to stay centered and clear-headed when the stakes are high and emotions are running hot. So I invite you to bring a gentle curiosity to your own experience today. As you move through your day, pick just one ordinary decision and observe your mental state during it. Were you fully present, weighing the options with a clear and calm mind? Or were you distracted, thinking about something else entirely, and just went with the easiest or most habitual choice? There's no need to judge what you find, simply notice it. That act of noticing is itself the first, and most important, step in cultivating the art of mindful decision-making. Inner fortitude is that deep-seated strength that allows you to remain steady and courageous even when everything around you feels like it's spinning out of control. It's not the absence of fear or difficulty, but the presence of a calm, unwavering resolve right in the middle of it. Think of it as the mental and emotional bedrock that the Stoic strategist builds everything upon. This isn't a quality you're either born with or without. It's a muscle, and like any muscle, it requires consistent, deliberate exercise to grow strong. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't just philosophize about strength from the comfort of an easy life. They actively engaged in daily practices designed to forge an unshakable character, to prepare their minds for any challenge life could throw at them. One of the most powerful exercises they used for this was the practice of voluntary discomfort. This might sound counterintuitive at first. Why would anyone choose to make their life harder? But the logic is brilliant. By occasionally and intentionally stepping outside your comfort zone, you accomplish two crucial things. First, you prove to yourself that you can handle hardship, which massively reduces the fear of it. And second, you learn to appreciate your comforts more deeply, which builds a powerful resilience against future loss. The ancient Stoics were masters of this. Seneca, despite his immense wealth, would regularly practice periods of poverty. He would wear rough clothing, sleep on a hard bed, and eat only the most basic food. He wasn't punishing himself, he was inoculating himself against the fear of losing his luxury. He was reminding himself that true happiness and strength do not come from external comforts, but from within. He was ensuring that if fate ever took everything away from him, his spirit would remain intact because it had never become dependent on those things in the first place. We can see a direct parallel to this in the modern training regimens of elite athletes or special forces soldiers. They don't wait for the extreme conditions of the championship game or the battlefield to see if they can handle it. They train under even more grueling and stressful conditions every single day. They push their bodies and minds to the absolute limit in practice so that during the actual event, their performance feels almost easy by comparison. That pressure has been normalized. A leader facing a high-stakes boardroom presentation uses the same principle. They don't just hope for the best, they practice relentlessly. They anticipate tough questions, they rehearse their delivery under simulated pressure, and they voluntarily step into the discomfort of being critiqued by their peers. This is all voluntary discomfort. It's the conscious decision to seek out small struggles today to build the fortitude needed for the big struggles that might come tomorrow. Another daily exercise for building this inner strength is the deliberate reflection on virtues. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. At the end of each day, they would engage in a rigorous self-audit. They wouldn't just ask, "What did I do today?" They would ask, "Did I act with wisdom? Did I choose courage over comfort? Was I fair and just in my dealings with others? Did I exercise self-control and temperance?" This isn't about self-flagellation for mistakes. It's about aligning your actions with your deepest principles. It's the mental repetition that strengthens the neural pathways associated with virtuous behavior. By making this a daily habit, you are essentially programming your default responses. When a crisis hits, you don't have to scramble to figure out who you are or what you stand for. You've already reinforced it day after day. Your fortitude in that moment comes from the clarity of your character, a character you have actively and consciously built. Epictetus, who knew a great deal about facing adversity from his beginnings in slavery, gave us a perfect quote on the source of this strength. He said, "You are not your body or your possessions, you are your choices and your actions." Your strength comes from within, from your ability to use reason to choose your path. This is the ultimate Stoic truth. Your fortitude isn't out there somewhere waiting to be found. It's not in a bank account, a job title, or the approval of others. It is cultivated internally through the daily choices you make to practice discomfort, to reflect on your virtues, and to use your reason to guide your actions. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have tested your own limits and found yourself capable. So this week, I encourage you to identify one small, manageable way you can practice strengthening this resolve. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Maybe it's taking a cold shower for 1 minute each morning. Perhaps it's having that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. It could be as simple as turning off all digital distractions for 1 hour to sit quietly with your own thoughts. Choose one thing and do it not as a punishment, but as a training exercise for the spirit. Notice how it feels and notice the small ember of confidence it sparks within you. Does your strategy serve only your own narrow interests, or does it actively align with a greater good? This is the critical question that separates a merely clever tactician from a true Stoic strategist. For the Stoics, a brilliant plan was utterly worthless if it wasn't rooted in ethical action. They believed that true strength and lasting success could only be built on a foundation of unwavering virtue. This wasn't a vague, feel-good notion. It was a precise and practical framework for decision-making, built upon four cornerstone qualities: wisdom, the ability to see the world clearly and make sound judgments; courage, the strength to act rightly even in the face of fear or difficulty; justice, the commitment to fairness, honesty, and the well-being of others in all your dealings; temperance, the self-control to exercise moderation and avoid being ruled by your desires or impulses. Every single decision, from the monumental to the mundane, was meant to be filtered through this four-part test. We can see the tragic cost of ignoring this principle throughout history and in modern business. Consider the dramatic downfall of the energy giant Enron in the early 2000s. Here was a company celebrated for its incredible innovation and seemingly brilliant business strategy. They were masters of complex financial engineering, and for a time, this strategy delivered enormous short-term profits and skyrocketing stock prices. But their entire approach was built on a foundation that completely lacked the Stoic virtue of justice. Their actions were deceptive, designed to enrich a few at the top while systematically misleading investors, employees, and the public. They lacked the courage to be transparent about their mounting debts, the temperance to avoid reckless and greedy expansion, and the wisdom to see that a house built on lies must eventually collapse. Their sophisticated strategy wasn't foiled by a competitor. It was destroyed from within by its own ethical vacuum. The pursuit of a goal without virtue is like building a magnificent castle on quicksand. It might look impressive for a while, but its eventual collapse is inevitable. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who commanded one of the most powerful empires in history, constantly reminded himself that power without ethics is meaningless. In his private meditations, he wrote, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee." This simple, beautiful analogy captures the essence of Stoic justice. Your actions cannot be considered truly strategic or successful if they harm the wider community of which you are a part. A strategy that requires deception, that exploits others, or that damages the common good might deliver a temporary advantage, but it will ultimately poison your own character and destabilize the very environment you operate within. The Stoic strategist understands that their long-term interests are inextricably linked to the health and fairness of the whole system. They seek wins that are not just victories for themselves, but that are also good for the swarm. This is what makes the Stoic approach to strategy so profoundly different. It redefines what it means to win. Winning isn't just about achieving a target, it's about how you achieve it. It's about ensuring that your path to that target leaves you stronger in character, strengthens your relationships, and contributes positively to your community. A victory that requires you to compromise your integrity is, in the Stoic view, the deepest kind of loss. So let's bring this directly into your own life for a moment. I want you to quietly reflect on a current goal or strategy you're pursuing, perhaps a professional objective, a financial target, or even a personal ambition. Now hold it up against the light of these four virtues. Does your plan demonstrate wisdom based on a clear-eyed view of reality? Does it require courage to see it through? Does it treat others fairly and contribute to something beyond yourself? And does it exercise temperance, avoiding shortcuts or excesses that could corrupt the outcome? This honest audit isn't about judging yourself, but about aligning your actions with a source of strength that is both unshakable and truly good. Every strategist at some point faces the weight of external expectations and the noise of other people's opinions. Whether you're leading a team, building a business, or simply trying to live according to your own values, you will inevitably encounter criticism, unsolicited advice, and the pressure to conform to what others believe is best for you. This external pressure can be one of the most significant drains on your strategic focus, pulling your attention away from your core objectives and toward managing perceptions and pleasing people. The Stoic approach to this universal challenge is not to build a wall and ignore the world, but to develop a profound internal compass that allows you to listen, consider, but ultimately make decisions based on your own reasoned judgment and virtues, not on the shifting sands of popular opinion. Epictetus, who knew a great deal about living under the judgment of others, offered some of the most direct advice on this matter. He made a crucial distinction between what is our own business and what is the business of others. He taught that our own business encompasses our judgments, our desires, our actions, and our character. The opinions, praise, and criticism of others, however, fall squarely into the category of things not within our control. They are the business of others. He famously said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.' This isn't about false modesty, it's a brilliant mental reframe. It completely disarms the power of gossip or criticism by accepting it with humor and grace, while simultaneously reinforcing the truth that your self-worth is not determined by another person's opinion. You acknowledge their right to their view without allowing it to dictate your own self-assessment or your strategic direction. Imagine a relatable modern scenario. You have a strong conviction about a new direction for your career, perhaps leaving a stable corporate job to start your own consultancy in a field you're passionate about. You've done your research, you've assessed the risks, and it aligns deeply with your values and long-term vision. But when you share this plan with family, friends, or colleagues, you are met with a wave of concern. They point out the financial insecurity, they remind you of the benefits you're giving up, they share stories of others who failed. This external pressure creates immense internal doubt. The reactive approach is to either abandon your plan to win their approval or to stubbornly dig in your heels and create conflict, both of which are emotionally draining and strategically unhelpful. The Stoic strategist, however, would process this differently. They would listen respectfully to the feedback, considering if any of the points reveal a blind spot in their planning. After all, wisdom involves seeking counsel. But after that consideration, they would return to their own internal judgment. They would ask, is this action wise? Is it courageous? Is it just for my family and me? Is it temperate? If the plan passes this internal virtue test, then the external opinions become just that, opinions, data points to be considered, but not commands to be obeyed. The strategist then moves forward with conviction, not because they are ignoring others, but because they are being true to their own reasoned principles. Seneca, who advised the most powerful man in Rome, and was therefore constantly surrounded by flatterers and critics, understood the emptiness of seeking external validation. He warned that chasing the approval of others is a fool's game because you can never control it or satisfy everyone. He wrote, "A man who is not wise cannot be happy, and a man who is not happy must needs be just the opposite of happy, unless you think that a man crushed with pain, worried with anxieties, burning with desires, and terrified with fears can be called happy." This gets to the heart of the issue. When you tether your happiness and your strategic decisions to the approval of others, you hand them the remote control to your emotional state. You will constantly be crushed, worried, burning, and terrified because you are trying to hit a moving target that you cannot see. The Stoic alternative is to find your happiness and your confidence in your own virtuous actions. The satisfaction of knowing you acted with integrity, courage, and wisdom becomes your primary reward, and it is a reward that no one can ever take away from you. This practice of valuing internal judgment over external validation is what allows innovators and leaders to pursue paths that are initially unpopular but ultimately right. History is filled with examples of scientists, artists, and social reformers who were ridiculed or opposed for their ideas, only to be vindicated later. They were able to persevere not because they were arrogant, but because they possessed a deep internal conviction that their work was true and important, regardless of its current reception. They managed external pressure by keeping their focus on the work itself, the one thing they could control rather than on the applause or the boos from the crowd. This internal fortitude is the engine of genuine progress and authentic leadership, so I want you to turn this lens on your own life for a moment. In which single area do you find yourself most overly concerned with the opinions of others? Is it in your creative work where you hesitate to share an idea for fear it might be rejected? Is it in your personal style or lifestyle choices where you feel pressure to conform to a certain image? Or is it in your career where you make choices based on what will look good on a resume or earn the praise of a manager, rather than what truly aligns with your skills and values? Identify that one arena. Simply bringing conscious awareness to this tendency is the first and most powerful step in reclaiming your focus and placing your strategic compass back where it belongs, within yourself. Stoic strategists intentionally seek discomfort to strengthen their adaptability. This might sound completely counterintuitive in a world that is constantly selling us on the promise of greater ease, convenience, and instant gratification. We are surrounded by technologies and services designed to remove friction from our lives, to make everything smoother and more comfortable. But the Stoics understood a profound psychological truth. When you make comfort your primary goal, you inadvertently make yourself fragile. You become like a person who only ever exercises in a perfectly climate-controlled gym the moment you have to run outside in the rain or cold. You struggle, you suffer, you might even collapse. Seeking voluntary discomfort is the mental and emotional equivalent of cross-training. It's the deliberate practice of exposing yourself to manageable levels of hardship so that when life inevitably delivers unplanned and uninvited hardship, you are not defeated by it. You have a deep well of resilience to draw from because you have already visited that place by choice. The historical examples of this are striking. The great Stoic teachers weren't armchair philosophers. They were men of action who rigorously tested their own principles. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, would regularly set aside periods to practice poverty. He would sleep on a hard bed, wear rough clothing, and eat only the simplest, cheapest food available. He wasn't doing this out of a sense of self-punishment or because he enjoyed deprivation. He was conducting a psychological experiment on himself. He was proving that his happiness and his sense of self were not dependent on his silk robes or his luxurious villa. By voluntarily stepping into the experience of having less, he was vaccinating himself against the terror of losing it all. He knew that if the whims of a volatile emperor or the turbulence of Roman politics ever stripped him of his wealth, his spirit would remain unbroken. He had already faced that demon in a controlled environment and had come out the other side realizing that he needed very little to be content. This practice gave him a tremendous sense of inner freedom and security that no external event could ever take away. We can translate this ancient wisdom into incredibly practical modern applications. You don't need to sleep on the floor or give up all your possessions unless you truly want to. The core idea is to periodically and voluntarily choose a more difficult path in small, manageable ways to build that resilience muscle. This could mean taking a cold shower for the first minute of your morning routine instead of a hot one. The initial shock is deeply uncomfortable, but you practice breathing through it, you practice accepting the sensation without panic, and you prove to yourself that you can handle it. This small daily victory sets a tone of mastery for your entire day. It could mean deliberately taking on a challenging project at work that stretches your skills and forces you to learn something new, even though you know it will be difficult and you might fail. It could mean simplifying your lifestyle for a week, cooking all your meals at home, avoiding unnecessary shopping, and disconnecting from digital entertainment just to remember that you are more resourceful and capable of creating your own enjoyment than you might think. Seneca captured the essence of this practice perfectly when he wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" This quote is the ultimate summary of the exercise. It's about confronting your fears of lack and discomfort head-on in a safe space so that you can answer that question with a confident no. It is not the condition you feared. It is simply a different set of circumstances, and within those circumstances you still have your mind, your character, and your ability to choose your response. This practice doesn't just build resilience, it actively cultivates a powerful sense of gratitude. By temporarily removing your usual comforts, you return to them with a fresh appreciation. That warm bed feels incredible after a night in a sleeping bag. That simple meal of rice and vegetables tastes like a feast after a short fast. You break the spell of taking your abundance for granted. So I encourage you to make this philosophy tangible today. Don't just think about it, experience it. Choose one small, voluntary discomfort to engage in before the day is done. It could be as simple as taking the stairs instead of the elevator, leaving your phone in another room for an hour to sit with your own thoughts, or having a conversation you've been avoiding because it feels awkward. The scale of the action doesn't matter nearly as much as the intentionality behind it. You are not punishing yourself, you are training yourself. You are sending a powerful message to your own psyche that you are the type of person who can choose difficulty, who can handle discomfort, and who does not need perfect conditions to be okay. That single, small act of courage is a direct deposit into your inner bank of fortitude, and it will be there for you when you need to make a much larger withdrawal. Even the most meticulously crafted strategy can be completely derailed by a sudden surge of emotion. That wave of anger during a negotiation, the cold grip of anxiety before a major decision, or the crushing weight of disappointment after a setback. These powerful feelings have a way of hijacking our rational minds and steering us off course. The Stoic strategist doesn't seek to eliminate these emotions. That would be both impossible and inhuman. Instead, they cultivate a state of emotional equanimity, a balanced, calm composure that allows them to acknowledge the feeling without being controlled by it. Think of it as the difference between being the ocean, tossed by every storm, and being the deep, still bedrock beneath it. The waves of emotion still happen on the surface, but your core remains steady, stable, and unmoved. This practice of equanimity begins with a simple but profound act of mental separation. Marcus Aurelius constantly advised himself to do this in his private writings. He would remind himself that he had the power to step back from his initial impressions and not grant them automatic authority over his actions. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This is the essence of the practice. The external event, the piece of bad news, the critical comment, the unexpected obstacle, is just a thing that happened. Your emotional reaction to it is a separate, internal event. Equanimity is the skill of holding that reaction at arm's length, observing it with curiosity. There is anger, or I notice feelings of panic arising, rather than immediately fusing with it and becoming the anger or the panic itself. This creates a crucial gap, a space for choice, where your rational, strategic mind can re-engage and decide how to respond most effectively. Imagine a leader managing a high-performing team that suddenly loses a key member to a competitor. The initial, visceral reaction might be one of betrayal, panic about meeting deadlines, and fear about morale crumbling. A leader lacking equanimity might act from this emotional place, sending a bitter email, making rash promises to the remaining team, or bad-mouthing the departed employee. These actions, driven by unchecked emotion, would likely damage trust and create more instability. In contrast, a leader practicing Stoic equanimity would first acknowledge the turbulent feelings. They might even say to their team, "This is unexpected and disappointing, and it's okay to feel that." But then, they would consciously access that calm inner bedrock. They would assess the situation objectively. What skills did we lose? How can we redistribute the work temporarily? What does this teach us about how we support our team? The leader then acts from a place of calm analysis, not panic. They might hold a meeting focused on solutions and opportunities for others to step up, turning a potential crisis into a moment that strengthens team cohesion and trust. The event was the same, but the response was transformed by equanimity. Epictetus, who focused intensely on the distinction between what we can and cannot control, gave us a powerful quote to anchor this practice. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This isn't a platitude, it's a strategic imperative. The event itself is often outside your control. People will leave, markets will crash, plans will fail. But your reaction, the meaning you assign to the event, and the action you choose to take, is your domain of absolute power. Equanimity is the guardian of that domain. It ensures that your reaction is not a knee-jerk spasm of emotion, but a considered, values-driven response that moves your strategy forward, even through turbulence. It allows you to absorb the impact of the event without being defined by it. Now, take a moment to look back on your own recent experiences. Can you recall a specific situation where your emotional reaction, however justified it felt in the moment, ultimately led to a less effective outcome? Perhaps it was a heated argument where things were said that couldn't be taken back, a decision made in fear that closed off better options, or a period of despair that paralyzed your progress. Replay that moment in your mind, not to criticize yourself, but to learn from it. Now, imagine how the outcome might have shifted if you had been able to access a state of equanimity. If you had acknowledged the feeling but then paused to ask, what is the most constructive and principled way to handle this? That single question, born from a calm center, has the power to change everything. In our fast-paced world that often celebrates immediate action and quick results, the Stoic strategist embraces a different, more powerful rhythm, the disciplined practice of strategic patience. This isn't about passive waiting or procrastination. It's the active, alert state of readiness that allows you to recognize and seize the perfect moment for action, what the ancient Greeks called kairos. It's the critical difference between being impulsively reactive and being strategically responsive. The impulsive mind sees an opportunity and lunges for it without assessment, like a gambler placing a bet on a whim. The patient, strategic mind, however, observes the situation, understands the currents at play, and moves with decisive precision only when the conditions are most favorable. This ability to discern timing is what separates a novice from a master in any field. The Stoic philosophers placed immense value on this concept of the right time. Seneca, in particular, wrote extensively about the importance of timing our actions wisely. He observed that while haste and impulsivity might feel productive, they often lead to wasted effort and unnecessary complications. He advised, there is a time for many words and there is also a time for sleep. This seemingly simple statement contains a deep strategic truth. That force of effort is not always the answer. Sometimes the most powerful action is conscious inaction. Sometimes the strategic move is to rest, to observe, to gather more information, or to simply allow a situation to develop further before you commit your resources. The Stoic strategist understands that every action has its own season, and trying to harvest a crop before it's ripe is just as foolish as letting it rot in the field. We can see the brilliant application of this principle in the world of investing. An impulsive investor driven by fear of missing out might pour money into a skyrocketing stock at its absolute peak, only to watch the market correct itself and their investment plummet. They were reactive, chasing the excitement of the moment. A Stoic strategist guided by patience would have a different approach. They would have done their research on a company's fundamental value long before it became a popular topic. They would understand that markets are cyclical and emotional. Their strategy wouldn't be to chase the peak, but to wait patiently for the right moment, perhaps when the market is fearful and the same stock is undervalued, to make their move. They aren't inactive, they are intensely active in their analysis and observation, but they conserve their decisive action for the moment it will be most effective. Their patience is their greatest asset. This same wisdom applies to high-stakes negotiations. Imagine you're trying to close a crucial deal. The impulsive approach is to lay all your cards on the table immediately, to push for a quick resolution driven by your own desire to get it done. This often weakens your position and reveals your urgency to the other party. The negotiator practicing Stoic patience, however, understands the power of timing. They listen more than they speak, they ask questions, they are comfortable with silence, allowing the other party the space to reveal their own needs and pressures. They wait for the right moment to present their key term, perhaps when the other side has expressed a particular concern that their offer directly addresses. They don't force the timeline, they work within it, strategically identifying and leveraging the opening that provides the greatest advantage. Their patience is a form of strength, not weakness. Seneca offered a powerful metaphor for this when he wrote, "Every perfect thing matures slowly." He wasn't just talking about objects, he was talking about plans, relationships, and personal growth. A rushed decision in your career, like taking the first job offer that comes along without considering its long-term fit, can lead you down a path that requires years to correct. In contrast, patiently developing your skills, building your network, and waiting for the right role that aligns with your values and goals is a strategy that pays compound interest over a lifetime. Personal transformation itself requires this patience. You cannot force wisdom or resilience. They are qualities that are cultivated slowly, through consistent practice and reflection over time. The journey of becoming a Stoic strategist is the ultimate exercise in strategic patience, trusting that the daily practice of virtue and reason will eventually yield the unshakable character you seek. So I invite you to reflect on your own relationship with time and action. Can you identify a situation in your recent past where rushing in led to a less than ideal outcome? Perhaps you sent an email in anger that damaged a relationship, or you made a significant purchase on impulse that you later regretted. Now, contrast that with a memory where your patience paid off. Maybe you waited to have a difficult conversation until you were both calm, leading to a much better resolution, or you delayed a project launch to fix a critical bug which saved your reputation. That space between impulse and action, that moment of patient waiting, is where your strategic power resides. Recognizing the profound difference in these outcomes is how you begin to value patience not as a delay, but as your most sophisticated strategic tool. How can you possibly refine your strategies and make better decisions tomorrow if you aren't willing to take an honest look at the choices you made today? This is where the Stoic practice of self-reflection transforms from a philosophical idea into a practical, strategic powerhouse. It's the disciplined habit of stepping back from the constant stream of action to examine your own performance with the objective eye of a coach reviewing game tape. The Stoics believed that this daily audit was non-negotiable for anyone serious about growth. They understood that progress isn't automatic. It's the direct result of learning from our missteps and reinforcing our successes. Without this crucial feedback loop, we are doomed to repeat the same errors, guided by blind spots we never take the time to illuminate. The most formalized version of this was the Stoic nightly review, a ritual of quiet examination at the end of each day. Before sleep, a practitioner would walk mentally through the events of the last several hours, not to brood or ruminate, but to assess. They would ask themselves pointed questions. Where did I act in alignment with my virtues today? Where did I fall short? Did my anger get the better of me in that conversation? Was I courageous in stating my opinion, or did I remain silent out of fear? Did I act with justice and fairness in my dealings? This wasn't about self-flagellation for mistakes. It was a rigorous quality control check for the soul. The goal was to identify the gap between their aspirations and their actions, so they could consciously narrow that gap tomorrow. It was a way of ensuring that each day, no matter how challenging, became a stepping stone toward a stronger, more virtuous character. We have a beautiful record of this practice in the letters of Seneca, who was a relentless advocate for this form of self-examination. In his letters to his friend Lucilius, he describes his own evening ritual. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, aware of this habit that's now become her own, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." He would then ask himself specific, probing questions. What bad habit have you cured today? What fault have you resisted? In what aspect are you better? This process forced him out of the realm of vague intentions and into the specifics of his actual behavior. He wasn't just asking, "Was I a good person today?" He was asking, "What specific evidence do I have for that?" This concrete approach is what makes the practice so effective for strategic thinking. It deals in observable actions and measurable improvements, not just feelings. In our modern world, we can adapt this powerful habit in incredibly accessible ways. The core concept doesn't require a philosopher's robe and a candle. It just requires a few minutes of quiet focus. For many, this takes the form of journaling. Spending just 5 minutes at the end of the day with a notebook, writing down answers to those Stoic questions, can create incredible clarity. What was the peak and the pit of my day? When did I feel most aligned with my values, and when did I feel off course? What was one trigger that caused a reactive instead of a responsive action? This isn't diary writing about events. It's analytical writing about your own judgments and choices within those events. For others, a meditative reflection works better, sitting in silence and mentally reviewing the day's key moments with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity, simply observing patterns without getting caught up in the story of them. Marcus Aurelius, though he was an emperor managing the vast Roman Empire, never considered himself too important for this humble practice. His personal journal, which we know as Meditations, is perhaps the greatest existing example of self-reflection in action. It was never intended for publication. It was his private workbook for processing the immense pressures of his role and holding himself to his own high standards. He consistently reminded himself of the need for this honest look inward, writing, "You can discard most of the junk that clutters your mind and clear out space for yourself by comprehending the scale of your world and contemplating the infinite expanse of time." He understood that self-reflection was the tool for that mental clearing out, the process of discarding the trivial worries and reactive impulses to make space for deliberate, strategic thought. This daily practice does more than just catalog errors. It actively rewires your brain for better future performance. When you consistently identify the precise moment where a better choice was available, perhaps pausing before sending that email, or choosing to ask a question instead of making an assumption, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with that better choice. You are essentially programming your own default settings. The next time a similar situation arises, that pause or that question will come to mind more readily because you have spent time reinforcing it in your conscious awareness. This turns self-reflection from a passive look backward into an active training ground for the challenges yet to come. It's how you ensure that your experiences are converted into genuine wisdom, not just accumulated years. So I extend a simple but powerful invitation to you. Before you end this day, carve out just 5 minutes for yourself. Find a quiet space away from screens and distractions and ask yourself a version of those ancient Stoic questions. What is one thing I did today that I feel good about, that aligned with the person I want to be? And what is one situation where, upon honest review, I could have chosen a more thoughtful, more virtuous, or more strategic response? There is no need for guilt or shame in the answer. The mere act of asking the question with sincere curiosity plants the seed for a different choice tomorrow. This small investment of time is how you become the architect of your own growth, consciously building a wiser and more resilient self one day at a time. At first glance, gratitude might seem like a soft skill, a warm and fuzzy emotion reserved for quiet moments of reflection. But from the perspective of a Stoic strategist, it is something far more potent, a razor-sharp cognitive tool that actively reshapes your perception of the battlefield. A thankful strategist doesn't operate through rose-colored glasses. They possess the mental discipline to scan their environment and consistently identify assets, advantages, and opportunities where others see only deficits, obstacles, and lack. This isn't naive optimism, it's a form of highly advanced reality testing. It's the practiced ability to conduct an honest inventory of your available resources, both internal and external, and to appreciate their full potential value, which in turn dramatically reduces the anxiety and distraction of endlessly craving what you do not have. This state of contentment isn't about passivity. It's about possessing a deep-seated confidence that you already have enough within and around you to begin, to persist, and to innovate. The Stoics embedded this practice into their philosophy as a direct antidote to the restlessness and dissatisfaction that can poison clear judgment. They understood that a mind constantly fixated on what it lacks: a bigger budget, a more prestigious title, newer tools, different circumstances, is a mind that is perpetually off balance and vulnerable. This craving creates a strategic blindness, causing you to overlook the powerful tools already at your disposal. The Stoic practice was to systematically and consciously appreciate what one has, not as a mere feeling, but as a disciplined exercise in accurate perception. By regularly noting and valuing their health, their friendships, their knowledge, and even their challenges, they cultivated a profound sense of self-contained adequacy. This inner abundance is the foundation of resilience because it makes you far less dependent on external validation or favorable conditions to maintain your morale and your momentum. Your energy source becomes internal and renewable, we can see this strategic application of gratitude play out with incredible force during difficult times. Imagine a small business navigating a severe economic downturn. The reactive, non-strategic mindset might focus exclusively on the negatives: dwindling cash reserves, cancelled orders, and fierce competition. This perspective leads to fear, paralysis, and a scarcity mentality that stifles creativity. A leader practicing Stoic gratitude, however, would start from a different point. They would certainly acknowledge the serious challenges, but they would first consciously catalog their existing advantages. They might express gratitude for a small but fiercely loyal customer base, for a talented and tight-knit team willing to adapt, for a lean operational structure that allows for quick pivoting, or even for the valuable market lessons learned from past failures. This grateful audit isn't a denial of the crisis, it's a strategic reassessment of the playing field. From this place of recognized strength, creativity flourishes. That loyal customer base becomes the focus of a new referral program. The adaptable team brainstorms innovative, low-cost service offerings. The crisis becomes the catalyst for a more resilient and agile business model that would never have been conceived from a mindset of pure lack. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who knew profound personal limitation, gave us a simple but devastatingly effective mantra for this practice. He advised, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." This single sentence captures the entire strategic shift. Grieving for what you lack is a passive, draining state that weakens your resolve. Rejoicing in what you have is an active, energizing state that fuels your ingenuity. It's the difference between a commander lamenting that he doesn't have more troops and a commander who feels grateful for the highly trained, motivated soldiers he does have, and then devises a brilliant strategy that leverages their specific strengths to maximum effect. The battlefield hasn't changed, but the commander's perception of his resources has, and that changes everything. This is why the daily practice of gratitude is so much more than a self-help cliché. It is a daily drill for the strategic mind. It's the mental muscle memory that ensures when a real crisis hits, your first instinct is not to panic about what's missing, but to calmly and quickly identify what is present and how it can be used. It grounds you in the reality of your current assets, freeing you from the debilitating fiction that you must have something else before you can begin to make progress. So let's make this tangible. Right now, wherever you are, I want you to mentally list 3 things you are genuinely grateful for that you might typically overlook. Not the obvious ones, but the subtle foundations of your daily life. Perhaps it's the reliable internet connection that allows you to learn and work, the physical health that lets you walk without pain, the public library that offers free access to knowledge, or the simple comfort of a hot cup of coffee in the morning. By consciously identifying these often invisible supports, you are not just feeling thankful, you are actively training your mind to see the abundant tools you already possess, tools you can immediately use to build a more resilient and effective strategy for your life. Our world is practically engineered to be loud. From the constant ping of notifications to the endless scroll of social media and the background hum of 24/7 news, we are drowning in a sea of noise. This isn't just auditory clutter, it's mental clutter. It creates a static that makes it nearly impossible to hear your own thoughts, let alone access the deep well of strategic clarity the Stoics prized. They understood that the most profound thinking, the kind that cuts through complexity and connects with core truths, cannot happen amidst the din. It requires the deliberate cultivation of silence and solitude, not as an escape from the world, but as a necessary retreat to reconnect with the inner citadel from which all effective action flows. Marcus Aurelius, despite the unimaginable noise of leading an empire at war, was a profound advocate for this inner retreat. His famous meditations were not written in a bustling forum or a crowded war room. They were composed in the quiet hours, often on campaign, in the solitude of his tent. He spoke of the necessity of retreating into his own mind, a place he could go to find peace and perspective no matter the external chaos. He wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills, but this is altogether unphilosophical when you can at any moment retreat into yourself. Nowhere can a person find a retreat more full of peace or less troubled than in his own soul." For the Stoic strategist, this is the ultimate skill, the ability to create a pocket of silence within themselves, a mental sanctuary where they can examine their impressions, question their judgments, and realign their actions with their virtues, completely independent of their surroundings. This practice translates into incredibly practical modern rituals. It's the conscious decision to take a walk without headphones, allowing the rhythm of your steps to quiet the mental chatter and create space for unexpected insights to surface. It's the practice of a digital detox, even for just 1 hour each evening, where you consciously disconnect from the demands of the external world to reconnect with your own priorities and values. It's the habit of sitting in a quiet room for 10 minutes each morning, not to plan your day in a frantic to-do list, but to simply reflect on the kind of person you want to be within the day's events. These moments of chosen solitude are not wasted time. They are strategic investments. They are where you recharge your mental and emotional batteries, process complex challenges away from the pressure of an immediate reaction, and return to your life with a clarity and calmness that makes all your subsequent actions more focused and effective. Seneca, in his letters, celebrated this power of stillness as the antidote to a frenzied and distracted life. He observed, "Nothing is so conducive to greatness of mind as the ability to subject each element of one's life to thorough examination and timely reflection." He argued that we must step back from the endless busyness, the constant doing, to simply be with our thoughts. He warned that a life without these periods of quiet examination is a life lived on the surface, blown by every wind of opinion and circumstance. The strategic power of solitude is that it allows for this thorough examination. It's in the quiet that you can untangle a complex problem, see the flawed assumption in your plan, or find the courage to acknowledge a difficult truth you've been avoiding. The noise of the world encourages reactivity. The silence of solitude cultivates a profound and powerful responsiveness. So I want to offer you a direct and actionable challenge, one that can serve as your first step in harnessing this Stoic tool. This week, I want you to intentionally schedule a short period of solitude. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be just 20 minutes. Block it out in your calendar as you would any other important appointment. During this time, find a quiet space, leave your devices in another room, and simply be with your own thoughts. You might reflect on a single, powerful question. Based on my actions last week, what do my true priorities seem to be? And are those in alignment with the person I truly wish to become? Don't force answers, just create the quiet space for them to emerge. This small act is how you begin to build your own inner retreat, a sanctuary of silence that you can carry with you, offering clarity and resilience no matter how loud the world becomes. Now let's turn to a quality that might seem at odds with the traditional image of a powerful strategist, but is in fact one of its most crucial components: humility. We often picture great leaders and thinkers as towering, infallible figures, brimming with unshakable confidence. But the Stoic strategist understands a deeper truth, that true strength is not found in the rigid certainty of arrogance, but in the flexible, open-minded awareness of humility. This isn't about self-deprecation or a lack of conviction. It's about the profound self-awareness to know the limits of your own knowledge and experience. It is the intellectual courage to constantly question your own assumptions and the genuine willingness to be wrong. An arrogant mind is a closed system, brittle and vulnerable to disruption because it cannot accept new data that contradicts its worldview. A humble mind, however, is an open system, resilient and adaptable because it is always seeking to learn, to refine, and to improve. It sees every interaction not as a threat to its authority, but as a potential source of insight. The Stoics framed this as a fundamental virtue, a necessary ingredient for wisdom itself. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and therefore understood power dynamics from both the top and the bottom, placed immense value on this ability to admit one's own ignorance. He taught his students that the first step toward gaining any real knowledge is to confess what you do not know. He warned against the pretense of expertise, arguing that pretending to understand something you don't is a far greater failure than simply admitting a gap in your knowledge. For a strategist, this is a revolutionary idea. It means creating a culture around you, whether in a team, a company, or just within your own mind, where it is not only safe but encouraged to say, "I was mistaken," or "I don't know, let's find out." This humility dismantles the fear of failure that so often paralyzes innovation and prevents necessary course corrections. It transforms mistakes from being shameful secrets into being valuable learning opportunities, the raw material for a better strategy. History offers us a stark and powerful cautionary tale of what happens when this virtue is abandoned, the story of the sinking of the Titanic. Here was a project hailed as the pinnacle of human engineering, deemed unsinkable by its creators and the press. This wasn't just marketing hyperbole, it was a deeply held belief that permeated the entire operation. This hubris led to a cascade of catastrophic strategic failures. The ship carried far too few lifeboats because the designers were so confident in its invulnerability that they considered them unnecessary. Lookouts were posted without binoculars because the risk of icebergs wasn't taken with the utmost seriousness. The ship steamed ahead at high speed through a known ice field, driven by a desire to break a transatlantic record. The arrogance of believing they had conquered nature itself blinded the strategists to the most basic principles of risk management and contingency planning. They had stopped asking "what if?" because in their minds there were no what-ifs. The result was one of the most infamous and preventable disasters in history, a tragic monument to the price of overconfidence. Marcus Aurelius, a man who wielded arguably more power than any Titanic captain, constantly guarded against this same arrogance. He actively practiced humility by reminding himself of his own place in the vast cosmos and of his own fallibility. He left us a powerful quote to this effect, writing in his Meditations, "Pride is a master of deception. When you think you're occupied in the weightiest business, that's when he has you in his spell." This is such a brilliant and incisive observation. Pride doesn't always look like boastfulness. Often, it disguises itself as earnest, important work. It's the feeling that your project is so revolutionary it defies conventional rules. It's the belief that your past successes guarantee your future ones. It's the subtle dismissal of feedback because you're convinced you see the bigger picture. Aurelius is warning us that at the very moment we feel most certain of our own importance and correctness, we are likely at our most vulnerable to strategic blindness. Humility is the practice of cutting through that spell, of puncturing that bubble of self-importance to see the world as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. So let's bring this concept from the high seas of history into the calm waters of your own reflection. I want you to take an honest, gentle look at your current strategies and goals. Is there one area where you might be holding onto a belief or a plan a little too tightly? Not because the evidence overwhelmingly supports it, but because admitting a flaw would feel like a personal failure. Perhaps it's a business idea you've invested heavily in that isn't gaining traction, and pride is preventing you from pivoting. Maybe it's a recurring conflict in a relationship where you refuse to apologize first, believing it would diminish your position. It could be a skill you're trying to master where you're resisting getting a coach or mentor because you feel you should be able to figure it out on your own. Identify that one pocket of resistance. Simply acknowledging that pride might be playing a role is the first and most courageous step in loosening its grip, opening the door to feedback, and ultimately crafting a strategy that is smarter, stronger, and far more likely to succeed. The only constant is change. Stoics master flowing with it. Instead of viewing change as a disruptive force to be feared or resisted, the Stoic strategist sees it as the fundamental nature of reality itself, the very river of existence that we are all swimming in. This perspective didn't originate in a vacuum. The Stoics were deeply influenced by the earlier Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who famously said that no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. Heraclitus taught that everything is in a state of perpetual flux, and the Stoics took this idea and built an entire practical philosophy around it. They reasoned that if change is the basic law of the universe, then fighting against it is not just futile, it's a form of self-inflicted suffering, a refusal to align yourself with the way things actually are. The goal, therefore, is not to stop the river, an impossible task, but to learn how to swim with its current, to adapt your strokes to its changing flow, and to navigate its twists and turns with skill and grace. This translates into a powerful mental practice of shifting your focus from resistance to adaptable response. When an unexpected change occurs, a sudden shift in your industry, a personal loss, a global event that upends all plans, the untrained mind's first instinct is to tense up, to deny, to rage against the unfairness of it all. This resistance creates a tremendous amount of internal friction and emotional turbulence. The Stoic strategist, however, has trained themselves to take a different first step. They pause and consciously accept the new reality as the starting point. This isn't passive resignation. It's an active, strategic acceptance. It's the mental equivalent of a martial artist using an opponent's momentum rather than trying to oppose it directly. By accepting that the change has already happened, they immediately free up all the mental energy that would have been wasted on denial and complaining, and they can now channel that energy into a single, powerful question. Given this new reality, what is the most adaptable and effective response available to me right now? Consider a modern professional facing the kind of career pivot that is increasingly common today. Imagine a talented graphic designer who has built a successful decade-long career in print media. They've mastered their craft, built a strong reputation, and enjoy a stable client base. But the market shifts dramatically. Demand for print work plummets as digital platforms dominate. The resistant mindset would see this as a catastrophe. They might double down on finding dwindling print jobs, complain about the decline of quality, and view the need to learn new digital skills as an unfair burden. This path leads to frustration, financial strain, and obsolescence. The Stoic strategist practicing adaptable response would first accept the market shift as an unchangeable fact. They would grieve the passing of the old era if needed, but then they would turn their focus to their sphere of control. They would ask, what transferable skills do I have? My sense of layout, color theory, and typography are all still valuable. How can I adapt them? They might decide to invest in learning web design, user interface principles, or motion graphics. They might reframe their identity from a print designer to a visual problem solver. This adaptable approach transforms a potential career-ending crisis into a challenging but exciting evolution, opening doors to new opportunities they might never have otherwise explored. Seneca, who experienced immense personal and professional upheaval, offered timeless advice for exactly these moments. He wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." This simple, stark contrast captures the entire choice we face when change arrives. To be willing does not mean you have to like the change or want it to happen. It means you choose to cooperate with reality instead of fighting a losing battle against it. The willing person accepts the new conditions and begins looking for a path forward. They are led by fate into their next chapter. The unwilling person digs in their heels, is dragged kicking and screaming, and exhausts themselves against the immovable force of what has already occurred. The outcome is often the same. The change happens, but the experience and the final position of the two individuals are worlds apart. One arrives ready to engage, the other arrives battered, resentful, and depleted. This practice of willing acceptance is how we build what we might call strategic flexibility. It's the mental and emotional agility to bend without breaking, to reassess a situation, and to pivot your approach without losing sight of your core values. It allows you to treat your life plan not as a rigid, unchangeable blueprint carved in stone, but as a living document, a rough map that you are constantly updating based on the new terrain you encounter. Your ultimate destination, perhaps a life of virtue, purpose, and service, remains steady, but the route you take to get there can change a dozen times based on landslides, new bridges, or unexpected scenic routes you discover along the way. This flexibility is the hallmark of resilience. It is the opposite of fragility. So I want to bring this directly into your own life for a moment. Look inward and identify one change that you are currently resisting. It might be a large external shift, like a restructuring at work or a shift in a key relationship. Or it might be a smaller, more internal change, like the need to adjust a long-held belief about yourself that no longer serves you. What is that one thing you find yourself subtly or overtly pushing against? Now, imagine just for a moment applying the Stoic practice of willing acceptance. What would it feel like to stop arguing with that reality and to simply accept it as the current state of play? From that place of acceptance, ask the strategic question: if I fully accept that this is true, what is one adaptable response available to me? What is one small step I could take to flow with this change rather than against it? The answer to that question is where your power resides. What if every single obstacle you encounter wasn't a barrier to your progress, but the actual training ground itself? This is the radical reframe that Stoic philosophy offers us when it comes to building mental toughness. The common instinct is to see challenges as unwanted detours on the path to our goals, as things to be avoided or merely endured. The Stoic strategist, however, makes a profound perceptual shift. They see each difficulty as the essential rep that forges a stronger character. It's the understanding that you cannot build a resilient mind any more than you can build strong muscles without resistance. The weight isn't the enemy of your fitness, it is the very instrument of it. In the same way, the challenges of your life are not interruptions to your peace. They are the necessary weights for your mind, the required resistance that develops the unshakable resolve you seek. We can see this principle embodied in the most extreme examples from history. Take the Roman senator Cato the Younger, a man who was so committed to living by his Stoic principles that he turned his entire life into a training regimen for his character. He didn't wait for fate to test him. He actively sought out discomfort and difficulty. He would walk through the streets of Rome in unconventional clothing, subjecting himself to public ridicule to practice his indifference to external opinion. He would eat plain food and sleep on hard surfaces to inoculate himself against the love of luxury. when he found himself on the losing side of a civil war against Julius Caesar, a moment that would break most people, he met it with unwavering resolve. His final act, choosing a principled death over living under a tyranny he opposed, was the ultimate demonstration of a character that had been deliberately and relentlessly hardened through a lifetime of voluntary and involuntary challenges. He wasn't born with that toughness, he built it rep by rep, obstacle by obstacle. This same ethos is alive and well in the world of modern endurance athletes. Consider an ultramarathon runner preparing for a 100-mile race through difficult terrain. Their training isn't just about logging miles, it's about systematically and intentionally making things harder. They will train in the rain, in the cold, in the heat, and on tired legs. They will practice managing physical pain, nutritional deficits, and deep mental fatigue. Why? Because they know that on race day, they will inevitably face all of these things. By willingly facing these hardships in training, they are not punishing themselves. They are building a reservoir of mental fortitude. They are proving to themselves in a controlled environment that they can handle far more than they think they can. When they inevitably hit the wall during the actual race, they don't panic. They have been there before, they have a practiced response. The obstacle is no longer a surprise. It is a familiar stretch of the path that they have already learned to navigate. This is Stoicism in action, using difficulty as preparation. Epictetus, who understood hardship from his beginnings in slavery, gave us the perfect mantra for this mindset. He said, difficulties are things that show what men are. Notice he doesn't say difficulties are things that break men, though they can. He says they show what men are. They reveal the quality of your character that has been built up until that point. They are the ultimate test, but they are also the ultimate reveal. Every challenge is an opportunity to demonstrate to yourself who you have chosen to become through your previous choices. This quote reframes the entire experience of hardship from being a random punishment to being a moment of truth, a chance to see the strength you've been building all along. So let's bring this down from the epic scales of history and athletics into your own life. What is one current, manageable challenge you are facing that you typically view with dread or frustration? It doesn't have to be a monumental life crisis. It could be the anxiety of public speaking, the struggle of learning a complex new software for your job, the discomfort of initiating a difficult but necessary conversation, or even the consistent effort required to stick to a new fitness routine. Now, I want you to try on the Stoic reframe. Just for a moment, stop seeing this challenge as a problem. Instead, view it explicitly as your personal training ground. That presentation isn't a threat, it's your workout for courage and clarity. That difficult software isn't an annoyance, it's your weightlifting for patience and problem solving. That conversation isn't something to avoid, it's your sparring match for honesty and empathy. By consciously choosing to see the obstacle as the exercise, you completely transform your relationship to it. You stop resisting it and start engaging with it. You begin to ask not, how can I get this over with, but what quality is this trying to build in me? That single shift in perspective is how you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming the architect of your own resilience. How often do your own preconceptions and ingrained biases distort the reality of a situation before you even have a chance to assess it? We all walk through life with a unique set of filters, past experiences, personal fears, cultural conditioning, and deep-seated desires that color our perception of every event. We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. This is the fundamental challenge the Stoic practice of objective judgment is designed to overcome. It's the disciplined effort to strip away the emotional overlay, the personal narrative, and the dramatic spin we instinctively add to events, allowing us to see the raw, unfiltered facts of a situation with crystal clarity. For a strategist, this skill is not a nice-to-have. It is the very bedrock of sound decision-making. A distorted map will never lead you to the right destination, no matter how brilliant your navigation skills might be. Marcus Aurelius dedicated a significant portion of his private meditations to honing this exact skill. He constantly reminded himself to break things down to their bare essence, to see them as they truly were, not as his fears or his hopes might paint them. He practiced what he called unpacking an impression. For instance, he would take something he found desirable, like a piece of fine food, and mentally deconstruct it. He would remind himself that it was just a dead fish, or a dead bird, or a bunch of fermented grapes. This wasn't about cultivating disgust. It was about removing the layer of value his own desire had projected onto the object. He was training his mind to see the thing itself, free from his subjective judgment of it. He applied this same ruthless objectivity to far more significant matters. The criticism of others was just sound waves in the air. A threat to his power was just another person acting according to their own flawed nature. A personal loss was simply the natural cycle of life playing out. By practicing this mental deconstruction, he was building a fortress of calm objectivity from which he could govern an empire and his own mind. Let's bring this into a modern scenario we can all relate to: receiving critical feedback at work. Imagine you pour your heart into a project proposal. You've worked late, you've researched thoroughly, and you feel genuinely proud of what you've created. You send it to your manager, and the response you get back is a document filled with track changes and comments, a sea of red edits and suggestions. The raw, objective facts are these. Your screen displays a document with markings on it. That is all, but your subjective mind, your preconceptions, immediately leap into action. It might interpret this as a personal attack. She doesn't like my work. She thinks I'm incompetent. This is a rejection of me and my effort. This interpretation is laden with emotion, defensiveness, shame, anger. It instantly clouds your judgment. From this biased place, your likely response is to either become defensive, arguing against every point, or to shut down completely, internalizing the criticism as a verdict on your self-worth. Both reactions are strategic failures because they are based on a distorted impression, not the objective reality. Now, apply the Stoic practice of objective judgment. You would consciously pause that emotional reaction. You would look at the screen again and force yourself to see only the facts. The facts are: a person with more experience has taken time to add specific notations to your document. Your manager's intention is unknown. It could be to help you improve, to ensure the project's success, or to meet a standard you weren't aware of. The comments themselves are not good or bad. They are simply data points. By stripping away the story, you've added the story of personal rejection. You can now engage with the data rationally. You can assess each comment on its merits. Is this suggestion valid? Does it actually improve the clarity of the proposal? Is this correction based on a fact I missed? This objective analysis allows you to respond strategically. You might accept some changes, politely debate others with logic and evidence, and learn from the entire experience. The outcome is a better proposal and professional growth, rather than a damaged ego and a strained relationship. Epictetus gave us the ultimate tool for this practice, a simple formula that separates the event from its interpretation. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But to manage that reaction, you must first see the what clearly. He taught that every event we experience is actually two things: the external event itself, which is neutral, and our judgment about that event, which is where all of our suffering or peace originates. Your proposal being edited is the external event. Your belief that this editing means you are a failure is the judgment. Objective judgment is the practice of isolating the first from the second. It is holding your judgment up to the light of reason and asking, is this thought true? Is it helpful? What is the actual, verifiable evidence for it? This process creates a small but critical gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap lies your freedom to choose a wiser, more strategic path. This is a muscle that requires daily exercise. It starts with the small things. The driver who cuts you off in traffic is not a malicious agent sent to ruin your day. He is a person who is likely distracted or in a hurry. The lukewarm coffee is not a sign that the universe is against you. It is a liquid that has lost thermal energy. By practicing objectivity on these minor annoyances, you build the strength to apply it when the stakes are higher, during a serious conflict with a partner, after a significant financial loss, or when facing a professional betrayal. The practice doesn't make you cold or unfeeling. It makes you clear-headed. You can still feel the sting of criticism or the heat of anger, but you are no longer a puppet to those feelings. You can acknowledge the emotion as a data point about your internal state, while still basing your actions on a rational assessment of the external facts. So your challenge is this: before this day is done, choose one assumption you currently hold and subject it to the Stoic test of objective judgment. Pick something specific. Perhaps it's your assumption that a certain colleague doesn't like you, or your belief that you're not good enough at a particular skill, or even your conviction that you must have a certain item to be happy. Take that assumption and deliberately separate the facts from the interpretation. What is the concrete, undeniable evidence? Now, what is the story you have been telling yourself about that evidence? How might someone with no emotional stake in the situation see it differently? This isn't about proving yourself wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you have the power to see more clearly, to choose your perspective, and to free yourself from the invisible biases that have been directing your reactions without your consent. Every strategist, no matter how brilliant their plan, eventually faces the fog of uncertainty, that unsettling space where the path forward is unclear and the outcome is anything but guaranteed. This ambiguity can be paralyzing, triggering our deepest instinct to retreat to safety and wait for perfect clarity that may never come. The Stoic approach to this universal human experience is not to eliminate the fear that arises, but to cultivate the specific type of courage required to move forward in spite of it. This isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of a deeper commitment. Stoic courage is the conscious decision to proceed with virtue, to act in alignment with your principles, even when every fiber of your being is pulling you back toward the comfort of the known and the predictable. It's understanding that bravery is not a feeling you wait for, but a choice you make repeatedly in the direction of what is right. Seneca, who lived and advised under the volatile and dangerous rule of Emperor Nero, wrote extensively about the nature of true bravery. He made a crucial distinction that separates the Stoic view from a more common understanding. He taught that courage is a form of knowledge, the knowledge of what is truly worth pursuing and what is worth enduring. He wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." This profound statement reframes courage away from grand, dramatic gestures and locates it in the quiet, daily persistence of living a principled life, especially when that life is difficult. For Seneca, the courageous person isn't necessarily the one charging into battle. It is the one who gets out of bed to face a day of grief, who speaks a difficult truth when silence would be easier, or who continues to work toward a goal despite a string of setbacks. This form of courage is accessible to everyone in any circumstance. It is the mental resolve to place your commitment to virtue above your desire for comfort or security. Consider the modern example of an entrepreneur deciding to leave a stable, well-paying job to launch their own venture. The uncertainty is immense. There is no guaranteed paycheck, no proven business model, and no safety net. The fear of financial ruin, of public failure, of letting down family and investors is a very real and powerful force. The impulsive reaction to this fear might be to stay put, to endlessly refine the business plan in search of certainty, or to abandon the dream altogether. The Stoic strategist, however, would feel that same fear but would not be ruled by it. They would anchor their decision not in a guaranteed outcome, which is impossible, but in the virtue of their effort. Their courage would be found in the commitment to act with wisdom in their research, with justice in their dealings with partners and employees, with temperance in their financial management, and with courage itself by taking the calculated risk. They proceed not because they know they will succeed, but because not proceeding would mean being governed by fear, which to a Stoic is a far greater failure. The action itself, taken with virtue, becomes the point. Marcus Aurelius provided himself with a constant reminder of this duty to act rightly, regardless of the emotional weather within. He wrote in his Meditations, "Let not your future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." This is a masterclass in strategic courage. He isn't telling himself to be fearless about the future. He is instructing himself to trust in the tools he has already sharpened. The weapons of reason are his practiced ability to distinguish what he can control from what he cannot, his discipline of objective judgment, and his commitment to virtuous action. His courage comes from the confidence that whatever the uncertain future holds, he will have the capacity to meet it with these same tools. He doesn't need to know the outcome in advance. He only needs to know that he will remain true to his principles, which are entirely within his control. This shifts the focus from the terrifying unknown of the external result to the known, solid ground of his internal resources. This practice transforms courage from a mythical character trait into a series of deliberate, manageable choices. It's the courage to have the difficult conversation with a loved one today, not knowing how they will react, but trusting that honesty is the right path. It's the courage to apply for a promotion you might not get, because the act of trying aligns with your value of growth. It's the courage to admit a mistake and apologize, uncertain of whether you'll be forgiven, because integrity demands it. Each time you choose the virtuous action over the comfortable inaction, you strengthen that neural pathway of courage. You build evidence for yourself that you can handle the discomfort of not knowing, and that the reward is often the integrity you preserve or the growth you unlock, regardless of the external result. So I want you to turn this powerful lens inward. Take a quiet moment to look at the landscape of your own ambitions and responsibilities. Where is one area right now where you find yourself hesitating, procrastinating, or holding back primarily because the outcome is uncertain and the fear of the unknown feels overwhelming? Is it a creative project you're afraid to share with the world? A career change you're contemplating but can't guarantee will work out? A vulnerable conversation you need to initiate without knowing how it will end? Or perhaps a financial investment in your own education that has no guaranteed return? Identify that single point of hesitation. Simply bringing it into the light of your awareness is the first courageous step. Then ask yourself the Stoic question, setting the fearful outcome completely aside. What would the next right action be if I were acting with courage and virtue in this situation? The answer to that question is your compass through the fog. In an age that often celebrates the myth of the lone genius and the self-made individual, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that strategic thinking is a solitary pursuit. We imagine the Stoic strategist as a solitary figure, meditating in a quiet room, detached from the world and needing no one. But this is a profound misunderstanding. While Stoicism absolutely champions self-reliance and the cultivation of an inner citadel, it simultaneously places immense value on our interconnectedness. The philosophy itself was never intended to be practiced in a vacuum. It was developed and refined in the vibrant, communal spaces of the Athenian Stoa, through dialogue, debate, and shared inquiry. The Stoic strategist understands that isolation can breed rigidity and blind spots, while collaborative growth provides the sharpening stone for our ideas and the mirror for our character. True strength isn't about going it alone. It's about knowing how to both give and receive support within a community of shared purpose. This foundational belief in our connection to others is crystallized in the Stoic concept of cosmopolitanism, the idea that we are all citizens of a single, global community. For the Stoics, this wasn't just a nice idea. It was a practical imperative that shaped how they engaged with the world. It meant that your responsibilities and your potential for learning extended far beyond your immediate family or city-state. Every interaction with another person became a potential opportunity, a chance to learn from their experience, to offer your own wisdom, or to practice the virtues of patience, kindness, and justice. A strategist operating from this cosmopolitan view doesn't see other people as tools to be used or obstacles to be overcome. They see them as fellow travelers on a shared journey, each possessing a unique piece of the puzzle. This mindset radically expands your available resources, transforming the entire world into a potential classroom and your network into a web of mutual support. The most direct application of this principle is the active pursuit of mentorship and wise counsel. Seneca, a man who served as a mentor to the young Emperor Nero and who was himself a devoted student of philosophy, wrote extensively on the incredible value of seeking out guides. He advised, we should choose for our models those who have spent their lives to good effect. We should let their words and deeds be always before our eyes and do as they would have done. Notice that he doesn't say to idolize these figures, but to learn from them. A mentor isn't someone who gives you all the answers. They are someone who has navigated terrain similar to what you face and can help you read the map for yourself. They provide perspective when your own view is clouded by emotion. They challenge your assumptions, and they help you see the gaps in your own strategy that your pride might have blinded you to. In the modern world, this might mean finding a formal mentor in your industry, joining a mastermind group of peers, or even building a virtual cabinet of advisors by deeply studying the biographies and letters of great historical figures you admire. But the Stoic view of community is not a one-way street where we only seek to take. It is a balanced ecosystem of giving and receiving. The same cosmopolitan spirit that urges us to learn from others also compels us to contribute and to serve. A strategist who only takes wisdom without ever giving back is like a farmer who only harvests and never plants. They will eventually deplete the soil. Offering your own knowledge, your time, or simply a listening ear to others is not a distraction from your own goals. It is a vital practice of the virtues of justice and kindness. It forces you to clarify your own thinking, as teaching a concept is the best way to truly master it. Furthermore, building a supportive network isn't about transactional networking. I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. It's about genuinely investing in the growth of others, creating a circle of trust where people feel safe to be vulnerable, to share challenges, and to celebrate successes together. This kind of community becomes a resilient safety net that can catch you when you fall and a cheering section that amplifies your victories. Seneca perfectly captures this symbiotic relationship in one of his letters to Lucilius, noting, We are members of one great body. Nature planted in us a mutual love and fitted us for a social life. This is a powerful reminder that our desire for connection isn't a weakness. It is woven into the very fabric of our being. We are designed to thrive together. The shared wisdom of a community, whether it's a handful of trusted friends or a larger professional network, provides a diversity of thought that a single mind, no matter how brilliant, can never achieve on its own. It is through the friction of different perspectives that we sharpen our own, and through the support of others that we find the courage to attempt things we would never dare to try alone. So I want to leave you with a simple but powerful pair of questions to reflect upon. First, look at your own life and identify the sources of your wisdom. Who are the people you learn from? It might be a specific mentor, a colleague whose judgment you trust, an author whose books have shaped you, or even a historical figure you study. Acknowledge their role in your growth, and second, turn that question outward. How are you actively contributing to and supporting the growth of others in your community? Are you a mentor to someone? Do you offer constructive feedback? Do you create space for others to be heard? Your answers to these questions will reveal the strength and depth of your own strategic network, and perhaps point the way toward making it even richer. We often think of ambition and contentment as two opposing forces locked in a permanent tug of war, one pulling us relentlessly toward more achievement, more success, more everything, while the other whispers for us to simply be still, to appreciate what we already have. This internal conflict can feel exhausting, as if we're being asked to choose between driving forward with relentless desire or parking in a state of passive satisfaction. The Stoic Strategist, however, rejects this binary altogether. They have discovered a third path, a subtle and powerful middle way that harmonizes these seemingly contradictory impulses. This isn't about lowering your ambitions or settling for less. It's about radically shifting where you place your emotional investment. It's the profound difference between being attached to the outcome of your efforts and being devoted to the quality of your efforts themselves. The first is a fragile state, perpetually at the mercy of external results. The second is a source of deep and lasting peace, available to you regardless of the result. This philosophy is powerfully articulated by Epictetus, who drew a clear line between what is ours to command and what is not. He taught that our actions, our efforts, and our intentions are squarely within our control. They are our sacred domain. The final outcome, however, the promotion, the sale, the public recognition, the final result, is influenced by a million factors outside our control. Therefore, he argued, to tie your happiness and self-worth to an outcome is to hand over the keys to your inner peace to the unpredictable chaos of the external world. It is a strategic error of the highest order. The Stoic alternative is to pour your entire being into the effort itself, to find your satisfaction in the integrity of the work, the focus you bring to the task, the courage it takes to try, and the lessons learned along the way. The outcome becomes a secondary consideration, a piece of data to inform your next effort, but never the sole measure of your endeavor's worth. Imagine two software developers working on the same ambitious new application. The first developer is entirely outcome attached. Their mood, their motivation, and their sense of self are hitched to the app's eventual success, measured by downloads, 5-star reviews, and venture capital funding. Every bug is a catastrophe, every negative comment is a personal failure, and the long development cycles are filled with anxiety about whether it will all be worth it. If the app fails to meet these external benchmarks, the entire experience is framed as a waste, a blow to their identity. The second developer, practicing the Stoic middle path, is ambition-driven but process-focused. They are no less skilled or hardworking. They are equally committed to creating an excellent product, but their primary satisfaction is drawn from the daily practice of their craft, the elegance of the code they write, the creative solution to a complex problem, the collaboration with their team, and the sheer joy of learning and building. The eventual launch and its reception are important, of course. They provide valuable feedback, but they do not define the journey. If the app succeeds, the developer celebrates and learns. If it fails, they mourn briefly, extract the lessons, and apply them to the next project, their core confidence intact because it was built on the rock of their effort, not the sand of the result. Epictetus gives us the perfect mantra to internalize this shift in focus. He advised, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This simple instruction is a liberation. It cordons off a section of your mental real estate and declares it your own sovereign nation, free from the turmoil of external events. Your ambition is channeled entirely into that first clause, making the best use of your power, your focus, your discipline, your creativity, your virtue. The outcome, the rest, you learn to accept as it happens with equanimity. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your own conduct than about the unpredictable final score. Your ambition is transformed from a hungry ghost always demanding more into a steady, sustainable engine of excellence. You strive not because you believe it will finally make you happy, but because the act of striving itself, when done with purpose and presence, is a form of happiness. This balanced approach reveals a beautiful paradox. By releasing your white-knuckled grip on a specific result, you often become more effective at achieving it. The anxiety that comes from attachment is a performance inhibitor. It clouds judgment, promotes rushed decisions, and makes you risk-averse. The calm, focused state of the process-oriented strategist, however, allows for clearer thinking, more creativity, and the resilience to persevere through setbacks. They are not constantly looking up at the scoreboard. They are immersed in the game, and that immersion is where peak performance lies. Their ambition is no less fierce, but it is a clean fire, burning on the fuel of virtuous effort rather than the dirty fuel of desperate need. So I invite you to turn this lens on your own life and bring a moment of honest reflection to your current ambitions. Look at a goal you are actively pursuing, whether it's a career milestone, a creative project, a fitness target, or a financial objective. As you hold this goal in your mind, pay close attention to the emotional quality surrounding it. Does thinking about it primarily bring a sense of excited engagement with the daily work itself? Or does it trigger a low hum of anxiety about whether you will succeed, what others will think, or what you will lose if you fail? Your answer to that question is a powerful diagnostic. It tells you whether your ambition is currently serving you as a source of purposeful energy or draining you as a source of fear. Recognizing that anxiety is not a sign to abandon your goal, but an invitation to perform a gentle mental surgery, to carefully detach your self-worth from the outcome and lovingly reattach it to the one thing that has always been and will always be truly yours, the integrity and fullness of your own effort. Reverse engineering the Stoic mind requires consistent practice, not just intellectual understanding. It's the daily, deliberate effort that forges new neural pathways and transforms philosophy from a concept you admire into a reflex you live by. The grandest strategic vision is useless if it isn't supported by the small, humble habits that you practice when no one is watching. This is how you move from knowing what a Stoic strategist would do to actually becoming one, building that unshakable inner citadel one brick at a time through the repetition of tiny, virtuous actions. The goal isn't perfection on day one. It's gradual, undeniable progress where today's small effort makes you just 1% clearer, 1% calmer, and 1% more courageous than you were yesterday. Think of these daily practices not as chores, but as the essential training regimen for your mind. Just as a musician practices scales every day to be free and creative during a performance, you practice Stoic exercises to be free and strategic during life's performances. The most powerful habits are often the simplest. A morning reflection, for instance, doesn't need to be a long, complex ritual. It can be just 5 minutes of quiet before the day begins, where you mentally preview the challenges ahead and consciously reaffirm the virtues you want to embody. You might ask yourself, what potential obstacles could arise today? How can I meet them with patience and wisdom? Who do I need to interact with justly and fairly? This isn't about worrying, it's about preparation. It's like a general surveying the battlefield at dawn, not with anxiety, but with calm readiness, already having decided on their principles of engagement. Journaling is another profoundly practical tool, and we have a brilliant example of this in the daily routine of Seneca. Despite being one of the busiest and most powerful men in Rome, he made time each evening for what he called his daily audit. He would retreat into solitude and mentally walk through his day, not to brood over mistakes, but to assess his actions with detached curiosity. He would ask himself pointed questions. Did I act with integrity in that meeting? Was my anger justified, or did it control me? Where did I allow the opinion of others to sway me from my purpose? This practice forced him out of the realm of vague intentions and into the specifics of his actual behavior. He was holding up a mirror to his own character every single night, ensuring that his philosophy wasn't just something he taught, but something he lived. Your own journaling can be just as simple, a few lines answering 2 questions. What is one thing I did well today, and what is one thing I can learn from? But perhaps the most accessible practice of all, and the one you can start this very second, is the discipline of the pause. This is the micro-habit of inserting a single, conscious breath between a triggering event and your response to it. It's in that tiny sliver of time that your freedom resides. When you feel the surge of irritation from a critical email, instead of letting your fingers fly across the keyboard in reply, you pause. You take one breath. In that breath, you create just enough space to ask the Stoic questions. Is this within my control? What would a wise and just response look like? This momentary hesitation is the difference between a reactive impulse and a strategic response. It's the practical application of cognitive detachment, and it costs you nothing but a second of your time. Yet its cumulative effect on your relationships and your peace of mind is immeasurable. Marcus Aurelius, whose meditations were themselves a form of ongoing practice, understood the colossal power of these small, consistent actions. He wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This quote is the ultimate summary of the practice mindset. Every single time you choose to pause before reacting, to journal instead of scrolling, to reflect instead of worrying, you are taking an obstacle, your own automatic patterns, and using it as the way forward. You are proving to yourself that you are not a slave to your first impression, that you can indeed be the author of your own story. So the invitation is simple but profound. This week, do not try to overhaul your entire life at once. That is a recipe for overwhelm and abandonment. Instead, choose just one Stoic exercise to commit to with gentle consistency. Maybe it's the morning reflection with your coffee. Perhaps it's the evening journal review. Or maybe it's just the practice of the pause, committing to take that one breath before you respond in a conversation today. Don't judge your performance, just practice. Observe what happens. Notice the subtle shift in your inner landscape when you consciously choose your action rather than simply enduring your reaction. That small victory is how you begin building a mind that is not just informed by Stoic strategy, but is fundamentally, unshakably Stoic itself. So as we bring our exploration to a close, let's take a final moment to survey the landscape we've traveled. Reverse engineering the mind of a Stoic strategist isn't about memorizing a list of rules. It's about internalizing a fundamental shift in how you perceive the world and your place within it. We began by drawing a clear line around the only thing we truly command: our own judgments, actions, and responses, freeing up immense energy once wasted on the uncontrollable. We then learned to apply cognitive detachment, not as a cold withdrawal, but as a tool for gaining crystal-clear objectivity, allowing us to see events as they are, not as our fears or desires paint them to be. This clarity becomes the bedrock for building profound resilience, where we stop seeing obstacles as misfortunes and start recognizing them as the essential training grounds where our strength is forged. Every challenge, reframed through the lens of amor fati, becomes an opportunity to practice virtue and deepen our capacity to endure and adapt. This entire journey circles back to the core of virtuous action. A strategy devoid of ethics is like a ship without a compass. It might move quickly, but it has no true direction and is destined to run aground. The Stoic compass, guided by wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, ensures that our ambitions are pursued with integrity, that our victories are meaningful, and that our actions contribute to a world beyond our own immediate gain. This virtuous alignment, combined with the adaptive flexibility to flow with change rather than resist it, is what creates a strategy that is both powerful and sustainable. It transforms you from someone who is simply busy reacting to life's demands into someone who is consciously, purposefully responding with intention. This is the ultimate transformation, from being a passive character in your own story to becoming its deliberate author. None of this is a one-time transformation. It is the cumulative effect of small, daily practices. It's the quiet self-reflection at the end of the day that turns experience into wisdom. It's the conscious pause before reacting that creates space for a more thoughtful response. It's the deliberate practice of gratitude that rewires your brain to see abundance where it once saw lack. And it is the daily choice to act with courage, even in small ways, that builds the unshakable fortitude to face larger challenges. These are not grand, dramatic gestures. They are the humble, consistent repetitions that build a resilient character, much like a blacksmith patiently tempers steel through repeated, focused strikes. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who embodied these principles amidst immense power and peril, left us with a timeless reminder of where true power resides. He wrote, "A sword is never a killer, it is a tool in the killer's hand." The Stoic mindset is that tool. It is not the external event that defines us, but the inner hand that wields our response. He encouraged us to build a strength that is entirely our own, stating, "You must build your character. When it is built, nothing can shake it." This is the enduring promise of this philosophical practice, an inner strength that cannot be taken from you by any outside force, a calm center that remains steady long after the storms of circumstance have passed. I encourage you to take these principles and weave them into the fabric of your life gradually. Don't attempt to overhaul everything at once. Start with just one practice this week. Perhaps begin with the dichotomy of control, consciously pausing throughout your day to ask, "Is this within my sphere of influence?" Or maybe try a nightly review, reflecting on just one moment where you paused and one where you could have. Observe the subtle shifts in your clarity, your calm, and your confidence. This isn't a race, it's a gentle, persistent recalibration of your mind. The changes will be profound, but they will reveal themselves gradually in a quieter mind, a more resilient spirit, and a more strategic approach to every challenge you meet. If this journey into the Stoic mind has resonated with you, if you're ready to take control of your inner world and become the strategist of your own life, consider subscribing to the channel. We delve into timeless wisdom like this every week, providing practical tools for modern living, and I would truly value your thoughts in the comments below. Share which Stoic principle you find most challenging or which practice you're going to try first. Your insights enrich this community and help all of us learn and grow together. Thank you for watching, and remember, the power to build an unshakable mind was never outside of you. It was always within, waiting to be